June 12th, 1979, with the eminent and hated Sidney Rittenberg, who was accused at his alma mater, UNC in Chapel Hill. I'm dealt with his enemies, appropriate manner. Sid, I wish you'd tell us about meeting Bart Logan. I never heard that from you. Yeah, in India.
Well, I got to India on a sea transport in the beginning of May 1945. And about 5 days, I guess, after we landed, we went to an army base called Kansurapara. K-A-N-C-H-A-R-R, I think, H-double-T-H. About, I guess, 60 miles from Calcutta. It was really out in the forest, but it was near the railroad track. And about 5 days after we got there, I got this running off like mad. And I had to go to the Army hospital, and they put me in bed. And there's a tall, thin nurse there, put me to bed. And she went to the door, the big long ward there, and she called out. She said, Logan, bring the bedpan. And I didn't think anything. I didn't respond to that at all. You see, I didn't know anything. And then I see this tall, slightly stooped character coming through the door of the ward in a white gown, and the bedpan in his Bart Logan. And I really died.
You have to know how dignified he was to realize that he believed it. 40 years old.
I said, no, I don't believe it. That's right.
He wasn't eternal either.
No, he
You
still
had
was.
some good times with him. And
Oh, yeah, I think he was a sergeant at that time. I think he was a buck sergeant or something, or a corporal or something. I was at a PFC anyway.
you all figured
Yeah,
out
right.
the war from an Indian base.
Oh, yeah, we figured out just about everything. And after that, we used to talk, very often. We used to get together and talk. And we got together a bunch of people. It was Mo Miller was in the same town. Yeah. Look, I saw on the bulletin board there, I saw on the bulletin board, I&E, for the I&E officer, Information Education, Sergeant or Tech Sergeant or something, Moses M. Miller. And I said, Moses M. Miller, that sounds familiar. I never seen him, you see. So I went to that office in the headquarters there, and I saw this fat little sergeant sitting there, and I said, Sergeant Miller? He said, yes. I said, are you Sergeant Rabbi Miller from New York? And he said, that's right. So I introduced myself, and then there was
Rabbi is his name, or
No. He was the chairman of the Jewish People's Committee, Rabbi Moses Montefiore Miller.
When he was a student here?
No, he was in New York. He was a rabbi.
I never.
Yes.
I didn't know Moses Miller. I'm thinking of Mo Mouse.
Oh, not Mo Mouse.
Who was Mo Miller? Now,
Mo Miller was the man, remember there's a paper called Freiheit? And there's a man named Olgan.
Olgan was the leader of the Jewish left wing.
Yeah, well, after Olgan died, one of the main people was Mo Miller.
Oh, I see.
I'd never met him, but I've seen his name in that, And then there was Ed Strong.
Ed Strong was
Ed
there?
Strong.
Of the Southern Negro Youth Congress.
That's right. President of the Youth Congress. Ed Strong was in Calcutta, and I ran straight into him. And then there was Walter Scott Ness, who was a psychology professor, also one of the left intellectuals that was always in the paper, always signing statements and things. And let's see now, there was a couple other people. we working.
But you had a crew, huh?
We had a crew.
Particular place.
We had a crew, and finally, we got
Were you
together.
still climbing poles or just waiting?
No, we just waiting. American GIs weren't allowed to any work with friendly Indian people. So we just waited there for 6 months. And we got together and went to the home of some of the local Indian progressives.
Yeah.
And they organized a lectures on Indian history for us. Yeah, and then we got a Birmingham.
Bart went to those with you?
Bart went to those with me, yeah. We went together from the camp. It was really like old home night. There would be 7 or 8 of us there, you know, every week. And it's all the only human thing we did during the whole stay there.
I think you also told me that was the place where Bart told you that he had decided the only real meaning to a communist movement would be a very indigenous one.
Right.
Right. Local group concept.
Right. We got, you know, he got the Daily Worker mail that had the declosed letter in it, criticizing Earl Brown. And we opened that damn paper and read it together. I remember. And I remember it was something. We sat down.
Lofty discussion.
That's right, lofty. And Bart said, Bart was very worried. You know, he wasn't very talkative anyway. But he said very little. He looked very
He ran deep, though.
He ran very deep. Very deep. One of the finest people I ever met in my life. You know, it's when some people get into your bone marrow and become part of you and change you. You never forget them. So he, anyway, the next day or a day or two, we got together and on the back stoop of that hospital on that board. I sat down there talking, and he said, I said, well, Bart, what do you allow about that letter? And he said, well, he says, you know, I've been thinking for a long time. I used to think before the war.
That was the way to let you out. Buddy?
Anyway, he said, now that we got the phone out of the way, Bart said, there's something that I used to think about in the States, but I didn't like to talk about, and that is that the whole business was wrong about tying the whole movement to Soviet foreign policy or to what happened inside the Soviet Union. So every time there was a change in policy or the line, everybody in the States had to turn a somersault. And there was something that I always felt you couldn't explain to American workers. He said, I don't remember exactly how he put it, but he said that when he went back after the war, that he wasn't going to do that anymore. He didn't think it could be done that way anymore. That any movement that's going to win the support and be respected by American workers has got to be an American movement that's mainly concerned about the working people in this country and that isn't going to be that much attached to anything in another country. So it has to follow the line and follow the policy and do all that turning around. And we talked along those lines, and we gave examples like examples of where we used to work so hard to get radical resolutions passed by trade union locals that and then to feel that we'd really accomplished something, whereas in fact you don't accomplish anything that way. Bart said that he used to like to send them up to the Daily Worker and see it published that the union local in this place or that place has passed a good resolution, and then people would think that people in that wherever that local was were really doing a bang-up job, But what difference did that make to the people working in that mill or whatever it was, really? And it didn't change the situation in that union either. So it wasn't the right way to build a movement. And anyway, we used to talk a lot in those days. Bart was very quiet, very well liked. Everybody that I ever ran into in that hospital unit, it was right next door to where our signal corps company was. Everybody thought old Logan was great, very kindly and helpful to the other men and to the nurses and so on, and just like he always had been in different situations, High Point or Greensboro.
That's right.
But another thing.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead.
yeah,
We'll finish on Bart. He was telling you.
I don't think that he meant that you don't stand up and speak out for what you think is true. I think what he meant is that you can't make, if it's an American movement, it's got to be for the interest of the American people. And it's got to look like it, sound like it, smell like it, taste like it, and everything. That's the way the Chinese did, and I think that's the only way you can do. But, you know, I also remember that the first time I ever saw Bart Logan was at that student worker conference in Durham, and I had never seen, well, I had seen when I was a little boy, but since I got any knowledge of society, I'd never seen anybody who was a communist. Mm-hmm. And it was at that student worker meeting when the Soviet Union was under very heavy attack, and the whole...
That was the fall of 1939, so there was
during the fight with Finland.
Well, and it was a terrible reaction following the non-aggression pact.
That's right, and the Dies Committee was cracking down in Chapel Hill, sending people to investigate and so on. The war between the Soviet Union and Finland was on, and you just couldn't hear anybody to say anything to the effect that the Russians were worried about the build-up of the German fascism on the other side of the border and were trying to clean out their positions attacking Leningrad and so on. And at that conference, Bart Logan stood up and announced himself Secretary of the Communist Party of North Carolina. And he stood there, he was wearing a blue-gray shirt and a gray suit, you know, and he just looked like a steel-gray man. And there he was, just, I think he must have said about 3 lines, but he put his position very plainly and simply, how he saw it, that this was a necessary step on the part of the Soviet Union in that international situation at the present, and the false stories that were being told from Finland. He just put it in 2 or 3 lines and he sat down, and that impressed me terrifically. Because I thought, well, those people, I don't know who they are, but they sure have guts. He stand up and put it exactly the way they see it. And to me, it was very admirable.
Yeah. I think Bart did have, I believe that on, and had an enormous impression on a lot of young people. I certainly remember that well. Let me ask you some of the other things. Homer Pike, would you tell a little bit about him, how you met him?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. If I ever knew it, I forgot it, you know, that a man had been killed that way.
I'm sure you must have known it. I've forgotten, or maybe I never knew even where he was from. Arkansas or Tennessee or someplace like that. And he had been...
What did he appear like?
Yeah. Well, he was taller than medium height. He was quite a solid built man, quite strong looking, had a fair complexion, shock of black hair, and you know, he looked like a preacher. if you'd met him in a restaurant, seen him sitting in a restaurant or something, you would have thought he might be a Baptist preacher, rather solemn looking, and he didn't like to joke and kid around a lot. He had a sense of humor, but he was very serious-minded. He had a redhead wife and 3 little redhead children. A really redhead.
You met them and got to know them over a short period.
Yeah, a very short period. They were all very thin. You could see they'd never really eaten well in their lives. Didn't look like they ever had really a good diet. And I think that he had once organized sharecroppers. He'd been in that sharecropper movement in Alabama.
What age
Mississippi.
person was it?
Well, I guess at the time now, it was 1942. I guess he must have been about, something like 30, 35, something around there.
You were a fellow organizer?
I was organizing state county municipal workers. We, at that time, was the janitors in...
That's right, that's another thing.
Replaced right on the street, right behind the post office there.
Rosemary, that way.
Yeah, down that direction. And one day, there was a student here then, named Harvey Siegel. He's in New York now, a very good guy. And he was in our apartment there when one day when Homer Pike came in. I'd never really known him well, but he drove over in his car. He came in, he was looking for me, but Harvey was there, so he talked to him too. And he said Harvey was active in civil rights. And he said now that he was working for the quarry workers. That union was headquartered in Barry,
Quarry
Vermont.
workers in Barry, Vermont, right?
Yeah. I've forgotten what they were called. Something like
United,
Sand, Glass, and...
United Stone and Quarry workers.
So there were...
Yeah, some such word.
Well, he was organizing for them. And
Later,
he,
they'll call it.
yeah. He had a local, I think it was in Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Somewhere out there. And it was out in that direction anyway. And he said that he had a this was afternoon. He said he had a meeting that night and that he got a message from the owner of the quarry. The union members were almost all black, but there were a few white workers. And he had a message from the owner of the quarry that if he came out there and held that meeting, he was going to kill him. So he would never get back alive. And he said that he wondered if we could ride out there with him. So it wouldn't be just one man all by himself, you see. And we said, sure we would, and we got in his car.
Those were the kind of days, wasn't it? People don't believe it today. I mean, it's like volunteering. You know, who will step out and be a scout in the Stepney? You know, you thought nothing of it. It was every
Well,
day.
you can tell the guy, well, if you get killed,
That's right.
you
Yeah,
get
you go
killed,
home.
your
Yeah,
problem,
no.
I mean.
Yeah, you're 20 years old. You say, of course I'll go with you. Which way does we go?
Yeah, you didn't think there was nothing that
You never thought about a price, did you?
Never thought.
You look back on those things.
And so we went out there, and Harvey and I stayed in a side room while the meeting went on, and it went off very smoothly.
Where was the meeting?
Well, it was
In a
right...
schoolhouse or what?
No, it wasn't a schoolhouse. It was a place where he had got himself a hall, a meeting place. I don't remember where it was. It was right near the quarry. I don't know what it was. And he went and had his meeting, and we waited, and then he came back, and we got in the car and started back. And we thought it was on the other side of Raleigh still, and we thought that it had come off pretty smoothly enough. Then we saw this car, a big car, coming up that hilly road behind us at a terrific speed, and just, careening around curves. You could hear the brakes squeaking and everything. And Homer was driving. Harvey was sitting in the back seat, and I was sitting in the front seat by Homer. And Homer said, I think that car might be trouble. And it came, the other car was overtaking us. This was a little old broken down car that Homer had, a jalopy. It was overtaking us and getting real close. And Homer said to me, he called out to both of us, he said, jump quick. They're going to ram us. Yeah.
You don't know if they were a pickup truck or something big you was worried about them for?
No, it was a big car. It wasn't a truck.
Yeah,
I remember
but
that.
they were
It was a
heading
big
into
car.
your bumper.
That's right. And
They weren't just tailgating you, they were coming up.
no, they weren't. They were coming up from. There was still, I don't know, must have been 30 or 40 yards behind us, but no signs of braking at all. They were just heading, coming up. And so he said, "Jump quick." And I opened the door and jumped.
How fast was your car moving? He wasn't moving too fast, so he just slowed up so you could jump.
Well, he was moving pretty fast, actually. I just sort of rolled up. There was I remember I jumped out of the car, and there was a incline going up to where the fields were, and I just sort of rolled up that bank.
Slowed you. You didn't go very far. That slowed you up.
Didn't go far. I just rolled up the
What
bank.
happened to him, though? He fell out on the pavement the other way.
Harvey flattened himself out on the floor in the back.
They didn't know he was there, maybe.
Well, they hit, that car hit the back, I think it was the right back side of our car, they just swiped it.
What happened to the car without the driver? It just smashed?
Well, Homer, you see, he never got out of the car. After he called us to jump, he started.
You're the only one jump.
I was the only one jump. Harvey flattened out on the floor, and he was okay. He didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
But Homer opened his door and started out. I guess he braked it now. So he started out, and he didn't get out from behind that steering wheel in time. So he was half in and half out of the doorway when they hit.
Threw him, huh?
It threw him way, must have thrown him about, I don't know, 15, 20 yards and down and up against the embankment that I climbed up. And I ran over to where he was. That car, of course, the car took off. No, the car stopped. The car was that car was also damaged a bit.
Yeah.
And they stopped and got out, cursing, the whole car full of men looking at it.
What'd they do, go back to Homer, where Homer was lying?
No, they didn't. They just looked, they were looking at their car, you see. Homer was over there in front of where our car was, and I ran over to him, and then Harvey got out and ran over to him. See what was, huh? Ran over to see what was happening. He was, he wasn't uttering a sound, but he was in excruciating pain. He was just doubled up and
internal injury,
bending back and forth like bowing over, He didn't say a word. And then Harvey and I both went over and said, "Homer, what is it? Where is it?" And he said, "Oh, I'm all right, I'm all right." And he got up and started walking back and forth. He was in pain. And then a Greyhound bus came by.
Now, if the car had come to a halt, so Harvey had gotten out, and they took off. The other car took off?
No, they were still there. The other car was still there.
The Greyhound bus was going to save you from them.
Right.
I got you.
The Greyhound bus came by, and Harvey flagged them down. They stopped. The driver got out and came over, and we said, "Please take this man to the hospital." And Harvey went. Wait a minute. Harvey went with him to the hospital, and I know what happened. While we were talking to the bus driver, I think the highway patrol came by. Highway patrolman came by on a motorcycle, and I don't know if they called him, somebody called him or what, but he came by and he stopped and took the names of the people involved, including the names of that people in that car. And the driver of the car turned out to be the son of the quarry boy. And so obviously...
Now, was there ever a court hearing?
No, there wasn't.
But was there ever a Raleigh News and Observer or other newspaper story about a wreck?
I don't think so. I never remember it coming out in the press.
But you and Harvey went to the hospital with him?
Harvey went to the hospital first, and I got on. Harvey went to the hospital with another car that was flagged down
Yeah.
first, and I got on the Greyhound bus,
With
followed them to Raleigh.
okay.
Harvey and
How
Homer
did-
were put in a car.
In a car, I got you. Okay, and you took the
I
Greyhound.
took a Greyhound bus to Raleigh, and I went to the hospital, and we decided that Harvey would stay with him there that night, and I would come back the next morning and relieve him.
Was it warm weather or cold? What was it? 40 feet.
Well, it wasn't very cold, because there was no problem of getting
Yeah.
home and covered up
Yeah.
or anything. I remember it was fairly warm.
Mhm.
Probably was in spring. I don't know. Because I left after.
You were
the
organizing here about that time?
summer. Yeah,
I know.
yeah, Kansas. And so then,
Now, you're in the Army by the end of the year, aren't you?
yeah, right. Then I went and I left Chapel Hill and went to Winston-Salem for a couple of months.
Was that after that? I wondered when Winston
This was
came.
before Winston.
Okay.
Winston, I went from Winston straight into the Army.
That's right. You told me you were not accepted by the Army. Your
That's right.
eyesight wasn't good enough for the Army?
That's right, but
Until you
organized-
tried to organize R.J. Reynolds.
That's right. That did wonders for my eyesight. I went into the combat infantry.
Well, this is remarkable, though. I mean, there is usually publicity, but they don't do anything to the murderers, union organizers, but no publicity.
Oh, there was no question of murderers. You see, that was nobody ever
There was
admitted that.
no charge ever made. What did the
No.
Highway Patrol list that as? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know.
You indicated maybe they blamed Homer for the accident? or
Oh, that
something?
was later. Yeah, that was
In the insurance, yeah.
Yeah, right. So the next morning when I went to the hospital, Harvey was there and the doctor was there, and the hospital, the resident
Mhm.
surgeon, and I talked to him and Harvey together, and he told us that both kidneys had been crushed and had stopped functioning at the time of the accident, and that Homer was living without any kidneys actually, but they were keeping this saline
Fluid,
solution and whatever it was, fluid
But
going
he
into his
wasn't
veins.
for long that way.
Wasn't
No
for long,
kidneys.
right? That he was
God, he must have been crushed internally.
all smashed up inside, and he was there
Did
getting
his
us
wife
through
and
it.
children come out? Or
His wife and children were staying right there around the bed when I went in. And the doctor said, he's not going to last till noon.
Really?
Probably, yeah. And that was in the
Was
morning.
he semi-conscious? Or what? No.
When I went in, he seemed to be unconscious. There was a tube down his nose,
Yeah. Right.
and he just made a sort of snoring sound.
Yeah.
That's all, with his breathing. But he opened his eyes, and he looked at his wife and the kids standing there on one side of the bed, and then he looked over at me. He looked back at them, and he looked over at me. And he just sort of summoned up his last strength, and he said to me, he says, "Sid," I bent over to hear what he's saying, and he's talking loud enough to be heard. He says, "Please don't let Sanderson get my local. Get that choir workers local." He was referring to Sanderson, was it? Yeah, it was the CIO. Yeah.
Had he clashed with him or something?
Oh, yeah. Oh, he had trouble with Sanderson because Sanderson, Homer said that Sanderson just tried to make points for himself out of having these locals set up as listers in the CIO. That built him out. But actually, he always made deals that were bad for the workers, workers dirty on themselves. And that was, so they was the last breath he was left in the man. Or he didn't have anything to say about take care of my wife, take care of my kids. I just think he
didn't love
did.
him. It's just sort of think he's son and left with something about what he believed in.
That's something to do for his people. But he had this responsibility, and he used his own strength to try to ensure that it was going to be done after he finished. So I think actually he lived until the next day, or that night, I remember, but he never was in consciousness. He never said anything. And then he went to the funeral. Harvey and I went to the funeral in Durham. He was living in Durham. In a sort of a real broken down flat.
and Homer was laid out there and his wife was still in the early, and we heard at the funeral that the insurance company was refusing to pay on the grounds that they had reports that Homer had been drunk. It was drunken driving. It was allegedly drunken driving. And the fact was, we got some people on the bus and the bus driver to witness on the spot that the driver of that car, and both his friends, on the history, had been drinking heavily.
Did the officer hear that from the bus?
Oh, yeah, he heard it from them and from us. I don't know if the officer smelled it or not, but you could smell it 2 feet away. But it was Homer that was accused of drunken driving, and the insurance company didn't pay him.
Those thugs that hit the bottle, they give themselves the courage to do their
Sure. He did. The wife and kids didn't get a penny.
God, I don't. If I ever heard it, I can't remember hearing it, because you see, it was a period in which I think I was still, with the miners in Alabama and
Oh yeah, well
and now you were in another world, though. I had left here. Now, there's another thing you told about. I wish. Would you tell about organizing for what union, the campus here, the janitors here at Chapel?
Yeah, that was the state, county, and municipal workers.
When did you begin that work?
I began that in, let me think, right after I got married. No, not right after.
Where did they hire you? While you were in Alabama, or did they invite you?
I think I was in High Point.
Okay.
What
you
happened?
Had come back from Alabama.
Yeah. And what happened was that the janitors here had organized.
Oh.
But they didn't have any organizers.
Mm-hmm.
They had organized.
Except Sandifer, who would be their leader.
Yeah.
They probably signed CIO cards.
Yeah. I don't know what they did, but they, some of the students here were helping them.
Oh, I see.
But they didn't have any trade union experience. They didn't have the time. So I got a call from the state, county, municipal workers to go to Chapel Hill and help those janitors.
Now, was that your first full-time union organizing job?
Oh, no.
Or had you gotten your experience in Alabama before that?
Oh, well, in Alabama, I'd worked for the transport workers.
That's right.
Organizing bus drivers and laundry workers. And then the first thing was the textile workers.
That's when you appealed to the bakery workers, the back
that's right.
Birmingham.
Right.
So you had black laundry
Black laundry
workers.
And the white girls from the Marita Bakery came over and fought off the white prostitutes.
Yeah.
It was.
So you had a good general experience in Alabama with bargaining and with organizing?
Yeah. And, well, some experience in bargaining, not
but
all.
More organizing and elections.
Yeah. And,
you've been in some strikes, too.
Yeah, some strikes. There was, but the first thing was in Roanoke Rapids with the textile workers.
That preceded it before you?
Oh, yeah, that's the first thing I ever did full time.
Was that when you dropped right out of
Chapel
school
Hill.
in 1940?
Right. I went right to Roanoke Rapids.
In 1940?
1940. Stayed there for 6 months, I think.
I'm sure I was aware of it, and I just don't remember the facts,
you must
because you had done that beautiful survey for Labor's Nonpartisan League
when I was a student, I did it.
Yeah, and I know I must have kept up with you. When I went down to Charlotte, back in the plant, and you were at Roanoke Rapids, I guess.
Yeah, but you were pretty much engaged in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Actually, Roanoke Rapids, there were two things. One was the textile workers. They had a strike in something like 1936, and the union at that time, they had an organizer came down there. The workers.
The Rosemary, what were those mills named? Do you remember the mills named?
There was a Rosemary.
And I carried it. Oh, no, I was Henderson, that area.
It was an area in town that was called Rosemary. But the main thing is that it was Simmons Beauty Rest mattresses.
Is what you were dealing with?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those mills there at that time, as I remember, they were making the ticking for the mattresses. And So they told me that
You
union
went to work there, or you were organizing there? What were you doing there?
organized.
Organizing.
Yeah, full time.
Could you break through, or was it very tough?
Well, we just started to get something set up. We had about, I guess we had about 70 members,
Yeah.
and we had a sort of a core of really solid people, workers, who were just starting to branch out. And we learned that square dance bit from from
Highland
Mill.
local at High Point.
At High Point.
Their square dances were the most successful thing.
Yeah.
there is.
And the local paper was running editorials, you know, about this alien criminal
Who was
coming
that,
here.
you? Or an
Me,
alien?
yeah. And
Vicious Press. And
I wrote them and said, let's compare and see whose family got to this country first.
Did they print your letter, or they?
No,
they just wrote it?
that was a company paper. It was run by the man who was the publisher plus undertaker for the Billy Williams for that town.
You're not surprised to learn that Roanoke Rapids is still tough country.
I was surprised to learn, yeah.
It's in modern times the epitome of anti-unionism. That bucks the whole federal establishment, all federal law, constitutional rights to the states.
Wow.
But tell me, you started square dances there.
Yeah. And
There were hardly any black workers in the mill, so except an opening.
There weren't any except sweeping and but another thing was there was a workers' alliance there of the unemployed, yeah. And the unemployed were largely workers that had been shut out after the strike in 36 or 37.
Oh.
When the organizer came down there, collected their dues, set up the union, took them out on strike, and then left with the dough.
You inherited that.
Yeah, and they said, well, he slept with our women, he took our money, and he went off with it. That's all. And you see what happened. They had
Were you actually representing the Textile Workers Union in that year?
Wasn't when I went in there, but established contact and got a charter from Pat Gorman, remember?
Yeah.
Pat Gorman,
Well, I thought you would have gotten a TWOC charter. No?
No, because
Why did you do it that way? They didn't trust TWOC.
Yeah, that's right.
They regarded it as a successor to
the ones that sold them out, yeah. And they did trust Pat Gorman for some reason. I don't think they'd ever seen
this is very odd what you're telling. I didn't know this.
Yeah.
UTW. You went to the old UTW.
Yeah, right. United Textile.
United Textile.
That's right. That's right.
But you really worked for the local people, I know.
Yeah, right. It was local. Ever since that strike failed, there were 12 of them that were the strike leaders, and they all got kicked out of the mill. Some of them were still unemployed. Old man Walter Pleasance was unemployed, working on WPA relief. Yeah. Now you talk about folk music. That's the first time I really ran into it. He had about 5 children, beautiful children, family, you know, in their teens. Every member of that family had a guitar or a banjo or ukulele or something. They would sit down at night and start that music going and singing.
He was your Workers' Alliance leader?
He was one of the leaders of the Workers' Alliance.
Have they become pretty educated? Were they pretty bright?
Very bright. Oh,
so that was the most attractive base in there for what you were doing.
They didn't have any idea. I've forgotten how they got in touch with the Workers' Alliance. I think that they just got somebody sent them something in the mail, and they just set it up. They had never seen any workup for the Workers' Alliance.
No organizer ever went in.
No organizer ever.
But they were pretty well organized.
That's right. And they wrote a letter to Bart.
Is that right?
Yes, sir. Saying they didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
You see? They didn't write it to the
That's where the
Party.
chick like towards a beautiful later.
Yeah.
He knows the opposite. He's waiting.
Yeah, right. But these 12 that had gotten fired, one of them was running a filling station, one of them was a local tax collector.
Is that right?
Yes, sir. Old man Carpenter, he was a tax collector, and he was one of the strongest union men.
Give me more names, because see, this is the Norma Ray story now. This is Roanoke Rapids.
Walter Pleasance was,
okay.
but there was a man that was just a towering giant, and
Yeah.
he was the center of the whole thing.
Yeah.
That was old man Mason.
Mason.
Mason, yeah.
Because some of these people may have children, I mean, they may still be the
He had a
same
boy.
thing.
He had a son, one son. He was a big, strapping,
Well, the Pleasance
husky
boys ought to be pretty,
man. Oh,
that
yeah.
family ought to be around there, yeah.
They ought to be around, and that Mason boy ought to be, let's see, 30. That was 40. He ought to be in his 40s now, middle 40s.
I wish I had your power recollection.
But that
I remember
man,
names.
well, you know that old man
Everything
Mason,
about
he's
him.
one of those that you always think about.
Yeah.
Because he was completely uneducated, no schooling. But I remember I used to, when we got a corps of people, about 12 or 15 people, I started having classes up there in that Union Hall. And I was sitting down and talking to them about political economy, just using an example about how the, from that old Leondi textbook, about how the carpenter takes the wood is worth so much, then he makes it into a table, and all of a sudden it's worth 3 times as much. Where does the value of the table come from? From the carpenter's labor. But the man, the owner, doesn't pay him for that much. He takes some. And so one day, after about 3 or 4 classes, and those men, old man Walter Pleasance, he lived on the other side of the river, and he would walk through the rain to get to that class at night for an hour or so in the rain,
Yeah.
and they would all come. And I would tell him, he was getting old and not all that healthy. I said, if it rains, to stay away. Oh no, I wouldn't miss that. And finally, after some weeks of those classes, I remember coming out with it and telling them, well, this stuff that we've been hearing about is what the communists stand for.
Yeah.
If you believe in this, it means you're a communist. You believe in communism. And I remember all of it. I was a little worried about how they were going to take it, because they were, cut off completely, mill village life.
Yeah.
And communism was like, they call it communist, it was like,
Right.
and all of a sudden I hear a bang from the back of that group there, and old man Mason stands up and he says, now I understand. He says, now I understand. I said, what do you understand? He said, well, I understand that I've been a communist for 30 years now, but I never knew it. He said, I didn't know that's what it was called. He said, I've always believed that. I've always believed that everything that had any use came from the working man's hand, that the bosses stole it. Yeah. And he was very outspoken. Then the thing was to quiet him down so he didn't go shouting all over the place about it, you see. But he told the stories in that place you can't
Like what?
imagine. Well, like, look. His wife worked all her life in that mill making mattresses, Beauty Rest mattress ticket. And when she died of TB, and it was long drawn out, about 6 months in the terminal stages when he nursed her, and just watched her die.
While you were there, or he told you?
No, it was just not long before I got there. And he told me, he said, do you understand that she worked in that mill for about 30 years, and when she got sick and died, she didn't have a mattress to die on? You know that?
That was old man Mason?
Yeah, old man Mason. She was just there on that wooden bed without a mattress. And he said, you know what I did after she died? I said, what did you do? He said, I just went down and opened the door and I walked in. He says, and I was mad. He's a man with biceps like the trunk of a
big
tree.
arm.
Oh, really a big man. Big, tall man, a big man. Yeah. And he talked a kind of quaint kind of language, that some mill village people talk.
Yeah.
I remember, for example, instead of carrying on, he'd say carrying to it. They're always carrying to it around there. He said. And he said, I went down there to Billy Williams. Billy Williams was the undertaker plus the publisher of the company paper, local paper, you see. And he said, I went in and I started looking around at caskets. And he said, Billy Williams saw I was dangerous man there. this Billy Williams was hated for being the stooge and a bloodsucker, you know. He saw I was dangerous, and he says, "So Mason," he says, "I know you don't have much money." He says, "I'll give you one of these pine board caskets on credit. Take it away." He says, I looked at him and I walked over to a really beautiful big casket, some kind of fancy wood carved and everything, and I put my fist down on it, and he says, "Billy Williams, this is the casket I mean to have, and it's not going to be on credit, because you're going to give it to my wife, because she worked for your man there all her life, and she got sick and lay there and died without even a mattress. After making mattresses for 30 years, she died without even a mattress to lie on, and you've given her this." And he says he did it. He was scared. He knew I would have smashed him if he didn't. He did it. He had a very funny kind of approach, you see, which was very rational. His approach was, people like that, you don't mind taking what they got.
Do you remember the village they were in, or the area they were in? Anything about what it was?
Well, as I remember, Roanoke Rapids, there was a part farther down the road as you came in from the Raleigh Highway, and you crossed the bridge to get to it, and then there was a closer part. I don't remember what the subdivision, I think there was one part called Rosemary, and another part called Roanoke, but I'm not sure.
I think there's a Roanoke.
And there was a very strong Mill Village feeling. Like people would say, if you want to drink of the waters of the Roanoke River, you'll always come back to Roanoke Rapids, you know. And there was a locomotive engineer from Roanoke Rapids that passed through there every day, going back and forth, I think, to Richmond or someplace. And every day he would blow a tune on that steam whistle for the man and for his wife in the village. I still remember that tune.
His wife was in the village?
Yeah, his wife and family was still in the village here. He was a town. And anyway, Mason lived in the far part of that town. I could go to it, I think, if I went back there. And Walter Pleasance lived in the part on the Raleigh side, on the Raleigh end of it. And that filling station was just as you entered town on the right-hand side of the street. I think it was a Gulf station. And the tax collector lived, you turned right as you entered town. Carpenter.
Carpenter was at that?
Carpenter, I think it was J.C. or J.S. Carpenter or something like that. And
and how long, you got into that in 40, and how long did you stay with them?
stayed there for 6 months. You know, it was, these 12 men had been kicked out. Every month, they had put $1 each into the kitty, waiting for the time when somebody came back and organized it.
Okay.
They were going to settle up the accounts. Every month, they put $1
That was not,
in.
that was the Workers' Alliance kitty, or not?
No, it was
Textile
these
Union
12
kitty?
men.
These 12.
Had been union leaders,
Yeah.
you see, on the strike committee. They were out, some of them were unemployed. And I guess when they didn't...
They never got back in, any of them.
Not all of them. And what they said was, look, they said, if you come here, boy, or I'll come here, girl. They said, boy, if you come here, what we can do is, old Mrs. Glasgow got a boarding house here.
Yeah.
And the workers...
You were right periodic collector?
Yeah, but very few. Very few. Very little. I couldn't write any details.
No, but that's when the idea of the Alliance and the UTW must have been fascinating.
Yeah, right, it was. Well, I don't know if I wrote UTW, maybe I didn't. But anyway, they said Mrs. Glasgow charges $6 a week for board and room. And what we can afford to pay is just $6 a week. So we'll fix you up for room and board, that's all there is. There's no union, there's no nothing.
Yeah.
But we're
That's
behind
what you
you,
work
we'll
for.
support it, that's what we're working for. And you know what that board and room was? The room was a room upstairs in that boarding house that had 6 beds in it, and every bed, there were 18 men sleeping in those
3
beds.
shifts. You
3
got out
shifts.
for the next shift.
I got in the next one, got in.
Right.
It was a hot bed, you know.
Well, you were with the textile workers, though.
That's right.
Couldn't be in a better place.
That's right. It was.
How about the board? What was it like?
Board wasn't bad. She was a good cook. She had 2 albino black women in there helping her to cook, and she did the cooking. A big, fat Scottish woman, Ms. Glasgow, whose husband used to work in the factory, and then he'd run off, I think. I got on very well with all the people in that place. He used to call me, I forgot what they called me, boy too, I think. I forgot.
How did you make out? In other words, did the company not control it enough to run you right off from the town, or were you underground? They didn't know who you were?
No, they knew. They knew because there was this
J.P.
union
Stevens didn't
hall.
own it yet. It was still a local management. That helped.
But all they did overtly was to put this, to write an editorial in the paper
Yeah.
attacking me as a criminal, alien criminal. It was sort of Bob Reynolds' language.
Yeah.
That had come in to stir up class hatred
Right.
and so on, you see. But it got going. These men, these
But
12
you weren't
men.
part of the CIO drive also. That was an odd part, right? I mean, most of the textile.
I wasn't, because that is
The
something.
history had distorted.
Right, it was connected with their being sold out, you see.
Yeah.
And the only
It
man.
sounds to me like that strike actually was at the beginning of the TWOC.
I think it was.
As it began at the first of 1937, and they still remembered it and wouldn't touch it.
Right,
That
that's
happened
right.
in
They
some
wanted, they believed in Pat Gorman.
Yeah.
And then they had, these,
Probably in 1934 they hadn't been sold out in the general strike by Pat Gorman. See the big textile general.
So anyway, we
Stayed with it for 6 months. Huh?
stayed with it for 6 months, and I really loved that place. And then I got transferred I got asked to go to Birmingham to be executive secretary of the League of Young Southerners because Tex Dobbs was drafted into the Army.
So you went there at the end of the year? 40 or, no, it was
Yeah, I
in
guess
41.
it was like
maybe,
the end of the year, but 40. It was the end of 40, I think. And I remember going through High Point and seeing Bard,
Mhm.
and when I walked in the door, he said, he said, "The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Because I was being...
You were leaving for Alabama.
That's
Yeah,
right.
You were leaving, yeah.
So off I
You were
went.
leaving this Carolina Empire.
Yeah, some empire. So anyway,
And you went, it's beginning of, you see, it's falling into place. All this
Yeah.
was just chunks, because that's when somewhere down there that I see you again. I haven't seen you really, because I've been, you see, in Charlotte, and I'm going to end up, I've been Labor's Nonpartisan League, but I'm going to end up in the Southern office, Labor's Nonpartisan League, without Lawrence, and somehow you were down there as some point in 41, right? So I'm still working in the plant through that whole spring of 41.
in the
But-
plant in Charlotte.
Yeah, right. I'm still I'm still a wrapping and slicing operator, and I stay there about a year, so I don't get down to Birmingham till the summer. So then I used to drive a little 38 black Chevy coupe. So
Yeah, I
what?
can
Well, now
remember
you were
it,
League of
Carl.
Young Southerners, huh?
League of Young
To
Southerners.
tell you one other thing, what you remembered, you said, did we both go to the American Youth Congress
Yeah.
in 1940? We did.
Yeah.
You must have still...
39.
No, that was 40. Think.
39.
No, I'm talking about the one where Lewis spoke.
Yeah, that was 39.
That was the winter of 40.
Sure.
When do you think? You think was it?
Was after the war
It's
with
around-
Finland started.
It's around February of 40. It's my guess.
All I remember,
And
everybody
the National
remembers it was
Negro
raining.
Congress is about only a month or two later.
Yeah.
Spring of 40.
Right. We drove up there. And that was a terrific speech, too. Owen Whitfield. Remember that?
Yeah, the
Reverend Owen
leader
Whitfield,
from
yeah.
Arkansas, was it? No, Missouri. Was it
Missouri, I
Yeah, I
think.
think he's...
That was terrific. And
You were really impressed with Lewis at AYC.
I never heard anything like that. And you know, that voice has been rumbling in my head ever since.
Right.
Certainly.
Well, it rumbled much earlier in mine, and then it never got out.
Oh boy, that adversary.
Did you go to the White House when Miss Roosevelt invited us?
No.
You didn't go when
I
we
don't
stood
think-
in the rain?
Oh yeah, I was there. Yeah,
remember
on
in
the
rain?
lawn, on the White House
On the White House lawn
right.
when he invited us, she invited us, and then he
Right.
got booed, you remember?
Oh yeah.
There were half the leaders trying to stop the booing, you know, out of the deference to her, and in fact she was still participating.
But he was being booed.
He was being booed, but you
because
know.
he said it was twaddle.
Right.
He was booed for saying twaddle.
Yeah, right.
Actually, to boo the president nowadays wouldn't mean anything, would it?
No, but
Nobody
in that
was
time it was a lot of the leaders, remember? I remember there were umbrellas and
And I'd
papers
been
on
a
the
big
people.
Roosevelt man. I'd met Roosevelt when I was a little boy in Charleston.
You
My father
had.
was mayor, acting mayor.
Yeah.
But you remember the original version of that down in Uvalde song?
Yeah, you remember the
Yeah,
saying.
sure.
Yeah.
It was.
Were you
President
there when she
Roosevelt,
asked
that's
me
what
to
he
sing
told
for
me.
in Chattanooga? And
No.
yeah, that's sure as hell. You know, it was President Roosevelt
That's many
again. You
strong
see,
votes.
not workers and farmers.
That's right.
Yeah, you're the one of the first people ever. You know, Uvalde sort of died a very fast death here, and then you tell me you've been singing it in China.
Oh, sure.
It was amazing.
Oh, sure. And so they, see, it was a very complicated thing. I had no trade union experience except helping out in Durham and in Greensboro. and
Well,
so
then this Roanoke Rapids gave you a grounding. And then you headed, but you weren't still in the mainstream of having to petition for election or do things. Did you get to do that down in Birmingham, or you did start a strike?
Yeah.
And you carried one through.
Yeah, we had that with the laundry workers and with the transport workers, bus drivers. The drivers that ran the bus from Bessemer to Birmingham and back.
Did you organize that?
Yeah. There was a man, the leader of the union was a man named John Nelson, bus driver. And the boss was a woman, and she knew how to use her womanly arts on those bus drivers.
Really?
Yeah.
Broke you up?
But no. When I left, I think the strike was still on. I was to replace, somebody had come in to replace me from the transport workers.
So you put the laundry workers into the transport workers? You stuck them all into one down there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was common too.
Yeah.
Times. I think that's where you told me you met Henry Mayfield, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Tremendous.
Yeah, Birmingham. Oh,
Yeah.
he was.
Did you know Hosey Hudson down there too?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's what we were debating. What was Henry? Remember in the photographs the other night?
Yeah,
what was
right.
Henry Mayfield's
Annie
wife?
Mae.
Yeah, Annie
Yeah,
Mae
yeah.
was the.
Yeah.
And what was the mining
Annie
town
Mae,
they
you
lived
know,
in? What was the
because
mining
Rob
town
used
he
to
worked?
call
Was
her
that
Annie
Hamilton
Larry.
Slope? Where did he work? Was it Hamilton Slope?
Virgil Moncrief.
No, wasn't he Henry at Hamilton
Henry
Slope?
was Hamilton Slope too, yeah.
And now tell me about Virgil Moncrief.
Virgil Moncrief was Hamilton Slope. He was a white miner from a Welsh mining family. And he married Lonnie Drummond's older daughter, Edith.
And Lonnie lived out in the country. or
Lonnie
was
lived
he-
out in Winston County,
Mhm.
just down the road from where Violet lived.
Mhm.
Winston County, you remember, was a county that never seceded from the Union.
Northern Alabama. Huh?
Yeah. When Alabama seceded from the Union in the
Yeah,
Civil War,
right.
Winston County...
That's where the Union flag continued to fly,
Right.
maybe. I heard that.
Right. Those farmers who were all free white farmers. And he married Lonnie's daughter, and he was on the negotiating committee at Hamilton Slopes and was very much trusted and respected by the other workers.
Did you go to any UMW meetings, or did you mostly meet the individuals there? Or did you...
No, I used to go fairly regular to the meetings. Some to Lewisburg, sometime.
Lewisburg was a coal mine, and you also
local.
visited the Red Ore mine, locals, or
Not till later.
later?
Later on, I was working out in
But
Bessemer.
this
I
is
lived
still
in Bessemer.
1941 now, huh?
41.
You moved to Bessemer and you lived in Bessemer?
Lived in Bessemer for a while. I had a room in a boarding
And Alan
house.
McNeil was there then?
Alan McNeil
Tell
was
us
there.
about Alan McNeil.
Alan McNeil.
I got to know him, but you got to know him better, I imagine, because he was not going to stay long when I got there.
Well, I don't know. He was, he was a man that he'd fought in Spain, and
Did he wear a vest when you knew him?
I think he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine looking and fine dressing.
Yeah, right. With a nice Scottish burr.
Right.
And he had been in Spain fighting. He'd been an officer.
Yeah.
I think
Maybe
he
a
might
major.
even have been an army officer before. I forgot.
Could have been. Yeah.
But he
had
had a
the
lot of
bearing
military
of
experience.
a
A military man.
leader.
Right. And during World War, wait a minute, when was that? During the first year of the war,
Yeah.
he wrote as a military commentator for the Daily Worker under
Really?
a different name. Yeah. He told me he
Told you.
confided that once. I forgot what
He
it
must
was.
have been an American military officer before he was
Could have
in
been.
Spain.
Could have been. He was a well-known writer at that time, military. And then he went into mine mill
Yeah.
and came out
He's,
there.
indeed, I think he was the Southern Director of mine or something. I think organizing director or something. He held a title.
He was pretty high. I think he was on the executive board. I'm not sure.
No, someone else had the board seat, but the
Oh.
president, like Reed Rock, could appoint a director of organizing, you know.
Oh, well, I guess
So a
that's what he was.
reactionary, I remember him, Jones, Van Jones was the board member.
Oh, yeah,
all those
Van
years.
Jones, right.
A
That's right.
reactionary guy, remember,
Yeah.
sort of racist in the eyes
Yeah.
of the black workers, for sure.
Right. And he came out there, and the only thing is that he had a two-fisted approach to union organizing. You know, he tried to solve things. He went down with that laundry deal, you see, and
He backed you on the laundry deal?
oh yeah. Well, he sort of coached me in union
Yeah.
work, you
Well, I
see.
think he was it was good for you even if you rejected part of it, don't you think?
Oh, yeah,
to get
sure.
an experienced old head like that.
Oh yeah, he was very good, I think, on everything except the sort of individual.
Yeah, tell us
struggle
about
business.
that, because I never saw that aspect of him, and I
Well,
never
there
saw
was-
very much of him.
You see, what was it? Alcuda Local?
Ishkuda.
Ishkuda Local?
And who was it he didn't like over there?
Bear Gunnin.
Bear Gunnin.
Bear
I believe
Gunnin.
it was, I don't think it was Muscoda. Maybe it was Muscoda or Ishkuda,
Maybe
one
it
of
was
the two.
Muscoda, I forgot.
Was he in Asbury Howard's local, and it was Muscoda? If Bear Gunnin was in that local.
I forgot.
Could have been he was with Asbury, Muscoda.
He was the local president, and as far as I could see, the man trusted him. And I never saw anything that much wrong with him at all. But you know, if you're going to talk politics, if you're going to talk about Soviet Union and everything, he just wasn't with that at all.
Yeah.
He wasn't interested. I think his name was Barry Gunnin, but
He was called Bear.
he was a big bear-like
Yeah,
man.
Bear
you know,
Gunnin.
he was
That's all
called
I
Bear.
yeah.
Bear Gunnin.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
I don't even know how you
McNeil,
spell Gunnin.
G-U-N-N, I think. But he got, McNeil got in arguments with him and decided that he was challenging his authority, and he challenged him to settle it individually.
Close the door and...
Close the door, lock the door in the Union Hall, take off your shirts,
Yeah.
and fight it
Your
out.
vest especially, yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think that vest had something to do with the wound.
It could be. I remember the vest because I can remember very often he would take off his coat but not his vest. He always had a vest on.
Right. I think he once told me that he had
He
a
had a chest
wound
wound, yeah.
and that he had to keep that part of his
Warm.
body warm.
Oh, yeah.
And then, see, another example was, now we had 3 laundries that were out on strike, and there were 2 really pretty big laundries. One of them was owned by the local judge, you see,
Yeah.
and
All of them in Birmingham.
Bessemer.
All in
Bessemer, yeah.
Well, that's why he was your coach. He
Right.
He controlled the Bessemer miners.
Right. So, actually, he didn't get the miners involved in it, but he paid attention to
Personally
the
gave you
person.
strategy. Yeah.
So what did he do? Well, the third laundry was this Chinese laundry. Chinese owner, black women washing the clothes, scrubbing. And you know, the Chinese laundry was really very small stuff, but the 2 big laundries put him up
Yeah.
to being tough towards the union, saying, you
Yeah.
stick it out, we'll support you. If you lose money, we'll help out,
Yeah.
and we're going to break it right at your place, you see.
Right.
So what is McNeil
You
go?
actually had 3 of them struck. Or did you just strike the Chinese?
3 of them struck, but I think only the Chinese laundry stayed struck.
Okay, yeah.
And so what does McNeil do? He goes down and knocks down the Chinese owner of the laundry.
He did? He went down the picket line? And
Hit him, and he hit him, knocked him right through the door of the laundry, back into the laundry. And then he just goes back to his office in Union Hall, you see, and what does that prove? I mean,
Yeah.
so anyway, they got these white prostitutes out to go into the laundry, wash the clothes, just to break the strike. They were bringing them in a bus from Birmingham, and every morning, and the black women working there, they couldn't do anything about it. You couldn't fight white women at that time.
Yes.
And there was a man who had been working for the transport workers as a temporary organizer named Bullard, B-U-L-L-A-R-D. He was an awful character. He was awful.
Yeah.
He was not only, he was cheating the workers, he was taking their money, and they hated him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, really, Mike, the most unpleasant experience I ever had in my life was the first time I had to go into that union local and talk to those black women, because they sneered at me and...
Had no respect for him, did they?
Right, and that was the image of the union for them.
Yeah, right.
And they, you know, I had to prove
Right.
that I was different, that the union was different, so it wasn't easy.
Right.
Um,
Now, did this strike occupy you most of 41 then?
oh, no.
Okay.
No, this whole thing only lasted about just a couple of weeks after I got in there.
Okay.
And it wasn't even full time then, because once those Marita bakery girls came over
Way
from
back.
Birmingham, that thing was finished. I mean, there were no more scabs there,
Mhm.
and the man had to get his laundry working again,
Mhm.
so he had to settle. And then I was invited to court there in Bessemer, you
Yeah,
see,
right.
for the...
Do you remember
signing
Jim
the-
Lipscomb, a labor attorney there? Did you have him? Who defended you? Do you remember?
Somebody did, but I've forgotten who.
That was the Red Ore miners' attorney was named James Lipscomb.
Oh,
You don't remember him, an older
No.
man, a good traditional liberal.
no, I only remember in Birmingham a big lawyer who was liberal named Crampton Harris.
Yeah, yeah.
He defended me.
Oh, yeah,
later.
he became famous, I think,
Did
with
he?
young Hugo Black maybe later, you know. Black.
Well, you know, there was...
I think it was called Harrison Black.
There was-
I didn't want that noise gets in here.
Uh-huh.
That's right, go ahead.
There was the angel and the
Mhm.
devil there then among the
Who?
lawyers. The angel was Crampton Harris. He was
Oh,
sort
tell
of
us
the
about the devil.
local-
I think we're going to know
The
that.
local Clarence Darrow.
Yeah, right.
The devil was something
Is it
Barr.
Bordenberg?
Bordenberg,
the
that's
U.S.
right.
Steel attorney. Sure, yeah.
Bordenberg. Oh, boy.
I remember Van Hickey, the dean here, you know, and I defeated him in the big U.S. Steel case for the Red Ore miners. Gordon Burr was so heated. I mean,
I
heck, he
know.
came up to me in the corner to say, I never got more pleasure than just putting it down.
Van Hecky did.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's supposed to be a judicial officer, but in private, he just, everyone got their charges out of it.
Oh, Burr was a real
Hateful.
popinjay, stuck up.
Right.
I wonder if he was descended from Aaron Burr.
Or worse, or worse. I want to follow you because I can't figure out yet how you're gonna end up at Reynolds and get drafted by the end of 42. So you're
Yeah.
coming through 41.
Well, what happened
and
was
coming back here on the
Yeah.
way, right, to Chapel Hill.
yeah, I got married and came back. Bart was hollering about nobody, and trade union people, CIO was hollering about nobody left in this part of the country. So I came back right after I got married, went to Charleston for a week, and then came back to High Point. And what did I do? When I got back to High Point, went to work in the Hillcrest mill, and then in another mill. It wasn't Highland. It was another hosiery mill.
Yeah, there
Making,
were a lot of poultry mills in there.
yeah,
Out of
making,
Melissa, I don't know
seamless.
which ones you were.
Yeah, in the finishing room. You know, that's another example of workers. There's a middle-aged woman working in that finishing room. You know, you get in an order for 45 dozen of this number
Yeah.
and 31 and a half dozen of that number and so
Yeah.
on. She would just reach in with her hand and grab this much and put it in the box, and then grab that much and put it in the box. I had to stand there and count them pair by pair, not dozen by dozen,
Yeah.
but pair by pair. And I asked her, I said, how can you do that? How do you know how many you got? She says, boy, when you've been doing this as long as I've been doing it, you can tell if there's one sock missing in 13 dozen. You just
Yeah.
you just know how to grab it with your hands, so you got as many as you need. And she did it.
Where was it? Was it at Roanoke Rapids? You were telling me about the black guy that.
No, that was in Winston-Salem.
Oh yeah,
That
you're
was
going to tell
Reynolds.
about the weight of the tobacco. Go ahead. Wait till we get to that. That's a good one.
So anyway, after a while of that, something came along. Oh, this state county municipal workers thing.
All right, so you get married and you come back and you come to Chapel Hill.
Yeah, came to Chapel
In
Hill.
41 sometime?
41, yeah.
Okay.
Must have been about spring of 41. And
And
in
how the
Chapel-
hell could you have been putting out buttons with Buddy, she says. I'm not figuring that out. What you doing? You're not in Birmingham in
I don't remember
in
that all
July
that
of
well.
41.
I don't think so.
I'll tell you what
Wait a
you're doing.
minute
You
now.
said stop the war and then later start
Oh, wait a
the
minute.
second
Oh,
front.
well, was the attack on
Yeah,
the
June.
Soviet Union
June
June
in
41?
41.
Well, I was still in Birmingham.
Well, that's the point, because
Uh,
just as quick as that came out, by July, there's U.S.-Soviet friendship or something, right?
Right.
Lend-lease to the Soviet, I forget what it would be.
Right. Yeah, because I didn't get in jail in Birmingham till after that.
Well, I wondered what, we were going to put a call in, and what he was talking about, that you were in a paddy wagon. You went to jail in the
Yeah.
summer of 41?
Yeah, right. But after that.
Was it a political thing, or was it over the strike?
Strike.
Which strike?
After I was there, they got the Red Squad on me, Pearson Osborne. But it started just because of the strike. Birmingham Post, newspaper guild,
Yeah.
came out on
You were
strike.
you were back in there. That's right, you were telling me about going down with the
Yeah,
coal miners
right.
and the open space,
Right.
the newspaper door.
Right, right. Coal miners just poured. Now that was Howard Nails' union. I can't remember what it was. Well, Howard Nails was the president.
Of one of the coal
Howard
mine
Nails,
locals?
his nickname was Hard As, because he was hard as nails.
Yeah.
He was a big, handsome, sort of lean, tall, muscular guy. He was really
From one of those
all-
coal mine locals. huh?
Yeah, it was the one, Hamlin Slopes
Mhm.
was over, I guess, north of Birmingham, and Lewisburg was out, east of Hamlin Slopes, and This Howard Nails local was all the way over on the other side of the city. I've forgotten what that mine was called.
Did you ever get to meet Bill Mitch and all of that?
Oh, sure.
The district president?
Oh, sure. Bill Mitch and his two Coward and Beddoes. Earl Crowder.
Yeah, Earl Crowder.
Earl Crowder and Noel Beddoes.
Noel Beddoe, yeah.
Oh, what a fun bunch of pie card artists. Well, Bill Mitch wasn't really a pie card, I don't think, but he was
well, I'll tell you, what was the other guy, the other steel guy, not Noel Beddoe. There's another steel guy, and I learned, Crawford. Do you remember Bill Crawford?
Yeah, vaguely.
Both Bill Mitch and Crawford were socialists.
Is that right?
Yeah, I learned that later.
Well, I always thought Bill Mitch wasn't bad. He was sort of...
He just had to get in line, yeah.
Yeah. But he was strong for Lewis.
Yeah.
He was a strong Lewis man.
Yeah,
I thought that was a good thing about him.
Yeah. And
Henry
era.
Mayfield. Henry Mayfield had a sextet of black miners that used to sing at those union meetings.
Tell me about
really
that.
good. He used to lead it, and they used to sing a song about.
He was one of the six, wasn't he?
He was one of the six, and they had a
have a
real bass. I don't remember, but they used to sing a song. John L. Lewis, he's a fine man. 600,000 miners behind him stand. When John L. Lewis passes the news, 600,000 miners gonna down their tools. You know, there was 600,000 in those days, not like now.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, the Birmingham Post, a newspaper girl, struck. I went out there, I've forgotten what it was to do. I think I just drove by in the morning to see what it looked like, the strike, and talked to a woman that was standing out in front, and she said they're getting a big bunch of scabs to break in, and we don't know what to do. You know, we're typists and things like that.
Oh, you reacted to that, man.
Yeah, I just went out to that union, and they were getting...
Hamilton Slope? Where?
No, it wasn't Hamilton Slope. It was on the other side of town. It was nearest union to the Birmingham Post. The one that Howard Nails was the president of. Something like Redwood? I forgot.
Okay.
Anyway, it wasn't the Bartleben. They were still open shop then.
Yeah.
But I went out there and I just hit it when they were changing the shifts. And all the men were just streaming out through the gate. And I parked the car and got up on a stump. That was a real stump.
You didn't know the crowd?
No, I don't know. I'd met Howard Nails' ass. I didn't know. I just got out and they didn't know me, I guess. I just got up and I started hollering and talking, collected crowd, and I said that those newspaper guild workers were there. It was a strike. They were CIO, and they were getting scabs on them, and cops protecting the scabs, and this was in a union town like Birmingham. I never got a chance to finish. They were jumping in the cars and pulling out before I had finished.
These were white workers.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right.
They were all white workers, I remember, that went down there that day. And Howard Nails went, and I remember one of the first things that happened was Howard Nails was walking down the street. Here was the Birmingham Post doorway, you see. Howard Nails with his real nice looking felt hat on his head, walking down the street, looking real mean like this.
Yeah.
And he went to...
The police were beyond them, or where were they?
The police were
back
to
behind
him,
them,
sitting in the cars, watching the gate, you see.
Yeah.
And he went down with about three or four of his boys following him, you see, to where there was a big they were marshaling the scabs over in an alley there. Yeah. And he went down, and he just called one of the scabs in the front line, a big guy, to come over to him, and he just whacked him right in the jaw, just like that,
Yeah.
without waiting for him to say anything. And his teeth were flying all over the place. I remember it was pretty gory. And then he walked back down the street, rubbing his fists with great satisfaction.
Yeah.
You see, and his
Yeah.
boys following him great
How'd they
admiration.
hide him from the cops then, or didn't they see this?
Cops had their backs to him, sitting
Okay.
in the cars watching the
Yeah.
gate.
Now, there was, what was the other story you told of the time that they were at that gate and somebody was molesting a woman or something? He climbed up on her back or something?
Oh, no,
That was
no,
another-
no, you got the wrong
Yeah.
man
Yeah,
on
wrong.
the wrong back.
Yeah.
No, you see, there was, the scabs were marching down the sidewalk, and the man in front looked like a professional heavyweight boxer, so.
Mhm.
He was dressed up like a real Jew,
Mhm.
but he was a great big fella, a great
Company
big fella.
man,
Yeah,
guard like for the scabs.
could have been. Yeah, he was walking in front carrying a pistol. And
Mhm.
the standing in the doorway with just two people. One of them was me, and one of them was a
Woman, wasn't it?
thin,
Yeah,
middle-aged woman
yeah.
in a black dress carrying an umbrella. So he was, you know, coming right up on us, this guy, and he was looking real ugly. He had a gun, but I didn't really think he was going to use the gun, except maybe use a butt end.
Yeah.
But he was about 7 times my size, you
Yeah.
know. So anyway, this woman, the old lady, I turned around and I said, "You better move because there's going to be trouble here in the doorway." And she took her umbrella and held it like a baseball
Like
bat.
the way she was
And she
gonna
says,
fight
"Well, I'm going to get him one with this anyway." So
He wasn't feeling on his arm, was
he was moving in, and I was thinking, well, you're just standing here and waiting, you know, and you know what's going to happen, but there's no way. You can't
You can't run anyway.
You can't run, you can't go back. You know, I really sort of all figured up right there. If you run, you're running out of your whole life, that's
Yeah.
all. Just like
Yeah.
a snake running out of his skin. So I just stood there waiting, and he was about 2 paces away from me, when out of the crowd of miners. You see, the miners were in the street in a semicircle around
this
that gate.
Around this scene.
Yeah, but not up on the sidewalk,
right.
in the street.
And the
scabs
cops
was
behind
not-
them, right?
Cops were parked in cars behind them with Tommy guns and tear gas.
Yeah.
You see, very conspicuous with their guns,
Yeah.
showing they were ready for trouble. And just before he got to me, I saw a figure break out from among the miners
Yeah.
and race over just like a cat and jump up on that big thug's back and give him a rapid punch, and he dropped like a tree that was chopped down. Really, he just dropped. And he dropped, and then a minute later, he got to his feet and he started, you know, looking around to see who he could hit, but he'd had it. He was dazed. He walked away rubbing his neck down the street, you see. And it was Virgil Moncrief. I recognized him when he got up on his back. I saw his face. It was
But then he
Virgil
disappeared right back into the miners? or how
Moncrief. He
did escape
disappeared.
the cops?
He just melted away
And the
inside
miners
that car.
surrounded him, so...
Miners
they
surrounded him.
couldn't
The
tell
cops
him.
came out. The cops came out and
They
were
didn't
looking
know where
around.
to
Who
find
did
him.
it?
Yeah,
Who did
They
it?
all looked for
Who
him.
did it? Yeah, we don't want any trouble. You better give us that guy who did it. And the miners, I never heard anybody even speak a word. They were just
They looked
scowling.
mean. They looked at...
Looked mean, and the cops, they didn't want that. So anyway, then I was walking, then the door was safed out at that point. See, the scabs had all left
Yeah.
back to the alley or somewhere. And then the guild members came out and stood around the door again, blocking the
Yeah.
doorway. So I walked up and down the sidewalk talking to these men, the miners, and then I heard somebody telling one of the cops that was out on the sidewalk that this is the feller, he's the one that went and called them men. Something like that, you see.
Tried to
Somebody
get you,
found
oh,
out.
that's what got you in the paddy wagon?
Right. So then the cop this Officer Mason, a big red-faced redneck, he came up and he said, you have to get off of this sidewalk because you can't be on the picket line unless you work in the Birmingham Post, and you don't work here. So I said, well, if I'm not a picket, I'm a pedestrian. If I'm not on this half of the sidewalk, I'm on that half. I got a right to be here as a pedestrian. And that's when he looked at me and gave me that lesson in political science.
Okay.
He says, rights? He says, boy, you ain't got no rights. You just think you got rights, he says. And he took out his watch and he says, if you're not off of this scene in exactly 1 minute, you're jailhouse bound. So I just waited while he counted, and he says, all right. And he took and put me in the police patrol, and the two cops in the patrol drove off. And that's when they parked it in the woods outside the city for about 20 minutes, and then I was booked for stealing the police patrol.
But you said later that was just to get you registered with the
FBI, to have a public file. That's what Crampton Harris said.
So sometime, maybe that summer or fall, you come back to Chapel Hill, though, to the...
That was about a month after that, I think.
Okay.
I came back to Chapel Hill. 'Cause I got married right after that. You know when it was? I think it was October.
October you get back here.
I think it was October when I got married when Charleston came in.
So say it's November, you come to Chapel Hill?
Yeah.
And this is important organizing. These people have organized themselves but have no organizer.
November of December.
Okay, 41.
Yeah, 41.
That's when you try to enlist for Harvard.
That's right. It was after I tried to
they're
enlist.
not
I
going to
came
draft you over organizing janitors.
No,
They'll leave you
no.
alone on 50.
I hadn't started when I went to enlist. I was still in the mill, I think.
Okay.
And
You probably came down in December or January.
yeah. So then I went to Chapel Hill and organized the. They were already organized, but I helped them get set up.
What were they trying to get? Just bargain on grievances? They couldn't get a contract, could they?
Union. Well, that's what they're asking. Union recognition. There were big inequalities in pay. Unequal pay for equal work. Not with white workers only, but amongst themselves.
Oh, amongst themselves.
Yeah, there were big inequalities. And, there were things like the workload. In some buildings, they were made to do 4 times as much as in others.
Who was the leader? Who were the leaders?
Well, there were 2, really. There was a young man named Buck something, forgotten. Everybody called him Buck. And there was an old man,
White-haired, huh?
gray-haired, grizzly-haired, named, he had something wrong with one of his eyes. It was sort of glassy, and it gave him a really fierce look, like a tiger, sort of. And that was old man Frank Ledbetter. And he was a Jehovah's Witnesses, whatever you call them, not a preacher, but whatever you call them. And he was a very wise man, had a lot of experience, knew a lot about the world. He was a janitor, I've forgotten where. And he was sort of heading it up. They all had trust in him. And old man George Washington, who was also brought out on all, occasions to be the sort of model pet janitor.
Yeah.
However, I always thought that he was an old Uncle Tom type, but he turned out to be very strong for the Union. And what happened was that the control...
How many members did you have? A couple of hundred? Not that many.
I don't think it was that many. I think it was more like maybe 100.
Okay.
Yeah. But the turnouts were all good. It was in a church down Carborough Way along Franklin Street there. Went out. where we used to meet. And they were confronting Carmichael, the controller.
Yeah.
Carmichael was saying that the state university couldn't sign a union contract. And
He wouldn't meet with them.
he wouldn't meet with him, no. He wouldn't hear of it. I mean, he
Yeah.
just didn't admit that it existed.
Yeah.
The assistant controller, L.B. Rogerson, Bruce Rogerson Sr., he was sympathetic, but he was...
You knew his son.
Yeah, I knew his son, yeah, Brewster. I knew his son well. We used to have a group that met in the church here, a discussion group. Mainly people who used to go to Dr. Graham's on Sunday.
Yeah.
And it used to be advertised in the Tar Heel, the meeting times. It was called, you know, this group was going before I got here, and then I was brought in as a freshman. It was called the LGST. LGST, which stood for Little Group of Serious Thinkers.
Unbelievable.
That's right.
Unbelievable. You were an LGST.
I was an LGST with Brewster Rogerson and a number of others. And the other people on the campus called it the Serious Group of Little Thinkers. Which but anyway, so and at that time, Frank Graham was under very heavy fire from Raleigh. It was building up to a crisis, and Carmichael
What had
was...
caused that? Had he allowed Earl Browder on it? What had caused the outbreak at that point? Do you
Oh, it had
remember?
gone on for a long
I know, but
time.
there are different high points.
Erickson,
Erickson had been named a communist or something?
Erickson had gone to Raleigh
Browder
and
defended him.
and had dinner with a black communist in Raleigh.
Oh, what was the name? James
Ford.
Allen or James
James
Ford?
Ford,
Yeah, something
yeah.
like that, yeah.
Vice presidential candidate.
Yeah.
And he'd been excoriated for that, and Frank Graham stood up for his right
Right.
to eat with a black man.
Right, yeah.
And his right to his own political beliefs.
Yeah.
And the whole, you know, Graham preached equality, equal
Yes.
opportunity for black people, and he ran a liberal school, no problem organizing the student union or anything like that. No problem with students that declared themselves communist openly or whatever. And
His sympathies, though, were with Roosevelt at that point,
Oh,
with
yeah.
Lee Wiggin, you know.
yeah,
and so
New
forth.
Dealer, sure.
Solid, and over the war clash, he didn't like the students that were opposing
No.
the war.
Right.
But he defended your right to disagree with him.
Yeah,
Within
he
limits,
did.
or was that?
Yeah. No, I think he was pretty
Pretty
straight
unlimited.
on that, in my experience anyway. He was pretty
Okay.
straight on. So Carmichael was a man, Carmichael was fighting the Union out in front,
Right.
and Carmichael was fighting Graham.
Yes, Graham
Plus-
was his target. really.
That's right. And plus I had been, you know, Graham had befriended and taken an interest in me and some of the others. So it was just a natural triangle. I went to see Dr. Frank and said, you know, very frankly about that this union was being set up and that the union wanted to do it in such a way that it helped the school play its full part in the war effort and everything.
Yeah.
And that it wasn't to wreck the work at the school, it was to improve it by giving the workers their self-respect and making them feel
Yeah.
a part of so and so. Oh, he was for that 100%.
Yeah.
And he came down twice and spoke in that church.
What would he
to the
say?
union.
I mean, he was the president of the...
He said that what they were doing was what he had always believed in, and that this was the liberal traditions of the university and Chapel Hill, and that he wished them well, and he would go into the background, he'd reminisce about old George Washington, how he came there and what a contribution these people had made, so on. And
He really encouraged them
He
with his
encouraged them.
status. And
Yeah,
stature.
yeah, he did. And obviously he did it deliberately, because the first time I talked to him, I pointed out that I hoped that he would do it, but I wasn't going to put pressure because I realized that he was in a situation.
How did he
himself.
get out of it strategically?
I don't know.
You never resolved. You didn't stay through the whole resolution.
No, because in the middle,
Yeah.
I got off on another project. I've forgotten why, but I was asked by the Yucca Cannery Agriculture
To
Pack-
go to way to Winston.
to go, no, first to go up to Roanoke, Virginia,
Yeah.
where there were Planters peanuts. Had
Not Roanoke. Suffolk that way.
Suffolk, is it?
Suffolk and
Suffolk,
outside
right.
of Norfolk. Yeah. You went east,
It's
didn't you?
right not far above the North Carolina line. Right?
Yeah, but towards the coast, not Norfolk, towards the mountain.
No, towards the coast.
Towards
right.
the coast, Suffolk is where you
Right.
went. Yeah.
Suffolk.
I think there was a big
Suffolk.
Planters peanut plant there.
Planters Peanuts, and Planters Peanuts
Yeah.
headquarters was there. Head
I
office.
didn't know you were into all of this stuff.
Oh yeah, there was a woman there who later came to Winston-Salem named Robbie Myers, I think, a black woman.
Is that right? As
She
an
was
organizer?
terrific. She
Yeah.
was a peanut picker.
I vaguely, yeah.
She was a peanut picker, and then she became an organizer. She was wonderful.
Yeah.
A whole
But
community.
let me just finish this if I can.
Yeah.
Because you had gotten to know Dr. Frank ever since you came here as a freshman.
Freshman, right.
And he had come to know your parents or
Yeah.
whatever.
He knew them when they came up here. We met them when they came up here.
So you were really very close. You could make this appeal on
Yeah.
very personal ground.
Well, it was a personal I
Mhm.
said when I had measles and was in infirmary, he came to see me.
Yeah.
In the sophomore year.
How many people would be in these? Was these Sunday gatherings or something?
Sunday evening.
And you were in them from 37 to 40, huh?
Well, I didn't go every Sunday.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
let's say in general,
Yeah,
you were
sure.
a party to that. thing.
Yeah, yeah.
What would go on? I mean, besides the tea and cookies, I don't know what it was about.
Yeah, that's right. Tea and cookies. You sit around the room, and there's some interesting people. There was Phyllis Hawthorne from New Zealand, who was granddaughter or great-granddaughter of Nathaniel Hawthorne. She would have a lot of stories about that kind of background. And then there was a Chinese. I told you that's the first Chinese I ever met. Was this Chinese girl student who used to go there. John, I think her name was. And
Would he ever have a black person there? I was just wondering how far he would go. You know,
I never
in
saw a
extent.
black person.
And
I never saw a
he
black
would try to
person.
stimulate you by having different kinds of people present as well.
Yeah, and he would, he would throw out questions and then sort of lead an informal discussion.
Yeah.
Or sometimes he would just come over and talk to you
Yeah,
personally, what you were in,
yeah.
what problems you were having,
Yeah.
what you were thinking
Yeah.
about. And his wife was a hostess, and she was a very sweet person, really. Very fine-looking woman, very sweet, gracious hostess.
Who were the students? Did the students impress you as much as at other things you told me? Were the students impressed you more than the faculty, or was this more? Was
Not really.
Was he the principal?
More
thing?
him.
Okay.
Yeah, more him.
And that really never got resolved then. In other words, when you appealed to him, he made these two talks, but he
Yeah.
never could overrule Carmichael's. It was a standoff, and
Well,
as
yes,
long as you
no.
remained.
When I left, we had reached an agreement. Carmichael was virgin on accepting it, but hadn't finally. But all the other people concerned had, and
was
that
a case of
was.
saving his face.
I think so. Yeah, the thing was that it wouldn't be called a contract.
Yeah, right.
But it would be an understanding.
You were doing something that later became a standard trade union practice.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know. Well, we were
You
just
didn't realize
playing it
but,
by
this
ear.
was gonna be. Said I went over from that summer where I do think we saw each other, and I do think Buddy was with you, and she knows what she's talking about. That would have been post June 71 around Birmingham. I'm Labor's nonpartisan leader. I get appointed to the mine workers staff, and I leave to Saltville, Virginia, and into other things with the mine workers, okay? Then when I return, Lewis has broken with Roosevelt as he's after Murray, and I go to Mine Mill, and from then on I remain. See Mine Mill, I go back to Mine Mill after the war.
I remember
And that's the reason, you see, we're at a distance. I mean, I really, if I picked this up, it would have been more gossip from Bell or something, you know what I mean? That type of thing, rather than, isn't that a fair statement? I mean, we were isolated by me being in Charlotte in the plant in 40 and 41, and you were doing other things, you see. Then our paths sort of crossed for a while at Birmingham, and we know plenty of mutual friends, but I didn't know all the things you were into. I never dreamed there were like earlier versions of what went on in Winston-Salem. That's why I wish you'd tell me about that. The Chick Black story's a beauty, I just tell it.
Yeah, well, we got to,
God damn it, you know, I've called Chick and we haven't got him. If I ever get Chick over the house, I want to hear him to hear your version of what happened, how you found him.
well, we got out there,
Beautiful thing.
then I got transferred. You see, pulled out before this, we had this agreement, and I think it was Frank Green or Harvey Siegel. I think it was Frank Green.
Frank Green, yeah.
Supposed to take care of this local here then.
Frank Green came to take care of this local? I didn't know.
He was here then, I
He was in
think,
school
already.
here. I
was
guess
in
he got
school.
his first unionism here.
He was in
before he
school.
went to Winston later.
Right.
Okay.
Actually, he helped me a lot when on this local when he was in school. And then when I left, I think he was the one that was supposed to keep it moving, keep it going.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And him being a North Carolina farm
Yeah.
boy, you know, it was good.
Yeah.
And so then I got transferred to Winston-Salem. And I remember I got out there, the two.
Now, you're the
There.
first guys organizing Winston-Salem for the
First
CIO.
First
Okay.
one.
Were you
Donald
alone
Henderson.
or you had a staff?
Alone.
Tell me
Alone.
about
I went in with Violet, and
This is
first,
Violet?
yeah,
Oh, your wife, Violet?
yeah,
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah, okay.
And I went, and Donald Henderson called up from San Francisco, I think it was, drunk as always,
Yeah.
telling me that he wanted me. I don't know where on earth he got my name or he got the idea, anything, but saying that he wanted me to go into Winston-Salem and organize a Camel cigarette plant. You know, my ears really stood up, but that,
Oh, yeah, Winston-Salem.
that was a famous open shop.
Oh, my God, the
Bastion.
Citadel, yeah, right.
And so he said it was going to be 4 organizers, a team with me as director, and to go there right away, and I was going to get $50 a week.
All right. Real money, huh? How much had you made up till that point in your life?
Oh,
Had you
I
had
think-
any good paying jobs? Had the transport people paid to do some of
I think they were paying something like $25.
Yeah. But this was a real offer. You were governor trade.
Well, I never
union
heard of anything like that.
official, yeah.
And you know that brother, he called up a month after we went in. He called up again to the home phone where I was staying. We had a flat. All, still drunk, saying that it was a grand guy, you're doing a grand job, and I'm going to give you a raise to $100 a week. Another $50.
Drunk that night for sure, huh? Did you ever get
And
the
I
100?
said, no, I didn't. I said, you're not going to do anything in kind. And we, you know, we had an argument there. I said, I can't spend this 50. We're just 2 people here. We got nothing
Yeah,
to
right.
do. And it's true, you know, you lived on dirt cheap in those days.
I never made $100 a week.
I never did
Get
either.
through the 40s, the 50s. We never got as much as $5,000 a year until close to 1960.
I never made
With
50
inflation.
any time.
No, I mean,
except
but that
those
shows you
two
the
and a half
decades
months.
later, you know. And this guy's telling you that at the beginning of the 40s.
Really, and I felt
Yeah.
felt guilty taking 50, but Bart says you take the 50 and give the rest to me, and that's what I did. I think we were giving him 25. And you know, when I got over to China and Army there, I wanted to give them what I could use on my pay, and they thought it was the strangest thing in the world. And I said, well, I've gotten in a habit of living like that. That's
Like
right.
this.
Anyway,
You don't smoke, you don't drink much booze, you don't have
drink any
bad
booze.
habits, you
Yeah.
haven't whorehoused all the time, so what in the hell can you do?
that's right, isn't it?
You eat well, but then people will feed you.
Yeah, but eating was real cheap in those days. We used to, two of us used to go down to the grocery and buy a bag full of stuff and live on it for
Oh,
long
Buddy and
time.
I would each carry a huge bag in Charlotte once a week.
Yeah.
4 big bags, and never, we took a $5 bill and always got a dime or 20 cents, something. You couldn't spend $5 on all the groceries 2 people could do.
All right. So then we went, and if you wanted to really skimp like
Yeah.
like Bart and Bell did sometimes, you could
Yeah.
eat even cheaper than we were eating.
Yeah, right.
And
Now you're going into Winston, right?
Winston-Salem, right.
This is how does a guy get that? You know, I've never heard. I mean,
what?
being sent in, you know, I've been sent into Harlem.
Yeah.
I've been sent in a place, this killer place, but not a giant company, you know what I mean, that's waiting for you and that's busted everything.
Well, you see, it was that was an advantage because this wasn't a killer place
Yeah.
because they'd never had anything to kill at least for a long time. But it was a giant place, and how the hell do you start?
Yeah.
Well, all I had was the name of this black family:
Okay.
Robert Black, his sister.
Robert C. Black, right?
Robert C. Black?
Robert C. Black. He's the tall, rather slender,
Right.
dignified
Right,
kind of guy.
right. He was very young then, and he was already very dignified.
He's retired.
He was retired. And he had a sister there. I
What
think
was
his-
her name?
Don't remember,
Okay.
but very pretty and also tall. And his mother, I think, was still
Theodosia
there.
Simpson wasn't related to him. You didn't remember that?
And
His mother was at the plant too?
his mother was not at the plant, but she was living in their home there.
What was that story you told? I thought that was the most fabulous.
Was
What he said. You're right.
yeah, well, he said,
This guy sends you to see him, right?
yeah. he
Tells
said-
you that
see,
what was he told you that they
He
had
said
been
this
active
family,
years?
he didn't know Robert, but
Yeah.
he knew a family named Black. And he had the address.
Yeah.
And he said, you go see them. He said they were in the unemployed councils in 1932.
Okay.
So maybe there's something still alive there. you
Okay.
see.
And you arrived as a
Nobody
union.
else there. Yeah, all right.
Okay.
I went to
Now,
see
that's
him.
a great story.
I went to see him, and he told me, he said, you know, we always knew that you people would be back one day, and we just been sitting there and waiting for you.
I think that's it. I remember that.
We know Roanoke Rapids was the same kind of
I
story,
know
right?
it's the
Same kind of story.
you
I'll
know,
bet
people
you
that
anything.
don't remember the respect in which communists were held, they have the shock of their life. I mean, they don't know history, you know.
Well,
Do you know in the Black Belt of Alabama, at Sharecroppers Union, there's a beautiful book out you ought to take back with you, you know, All God's Dangers. The guy invents a whole new name, Nate Shaw. He doesn't realize these people are not going to want a phony name. The reporters are going to track them down. They're going to be very proud. You see, they were in the Communist Party under the, you know, Sharecroppers Union, where it was an absolute uprising, just bloodshed. And that same sort of feeling, you follow me? Where have you been? You know, I mean, when they arrived. That this guy's
I'll
giving
bet you could go out today in the United States and find umpteen places where people will say the same thing.
See, there's no continuity, but there's a beautiful residue. It's like in France, in Wales, you have the sense. Tremendous depth to the political movement, you know? Like a person who was a communist, it was like an unforgivable thing. The whole community was like communist. You know, I mean, it's not true here, but there's these isolated islands. They give you this sense, don't they, of just what he said. Didn't you run into that? In different moods.
The whole thing among the people are very deep stirrings.
Deep, yeah.
You know, we had a young black cab driver that brought us in from LaGuardia when we, from Kennedy, when we came back from California,
Yeah.
just last week. Young black guy, very quiet. He drove us in,
Yeah.
and he started talking. Yulin started talking to him,
Yeah.
and she told him we were from Peking. And they just chatted, you know, and she asked him about life and pay and everything. And when we got out, I gave him, I asked him to give me change. I gave him a big bill, so that it left him with a tip of $1.50. So I thought it was a long haul, give a little more. He wouldn't have it. He gave me back the 50 cents. And thanked me and drove off. And then I went upstairs. This is a New York cab driver.
Yeah.
Went upstairs to my sister's apartment on the 14th floor. And about half an hour later, the doorman calls up. Says, did you leave your sunglasses in a taxi? And I said, I looked for the glasses, and I said, yeah, I must have. And he said, well, the cab driver just brought them back.
I already hear.
And I rushed, I said, well, ask him to wait a minute. I rushed downstairs, you know, to thank him. He's gone. Doorman said he just handed them to
He
me
was
and
a black
told me a
guy,
story.
or
Yeah, black. Young black guy must have been maybe
You
early
related
30s.
to the whole.
This time when we were coming out to, when we were coming out to the day of play, you see, I'm telling this to you, but there are any number of people around here that wouldn't believe it, because they're hearing in the press every day, and from people that are talking on TV, that the people are no goddamn good. Really. They're weak, they're weird, they're unstable, they're divided, no goddamn good. And here was a girl who's a drama student and working in a theater, driving a cab during her vacation. And her ideas of the playwrights and so on, a young New York girl, you know, and the way she was talking about young people nowadays who are all hopped up about sex. They think that's the only thing you live. Pretty girl. Only thing you're living for is sex or dope. Things like this. They don't see what's happening to the country. They don't see that it's up to them. And she was talking, I asked her what she think of Arthur Miller, and she said, well, I like Death of the Salesman. That was a good play, but the only thing wrong is, she was 18. Only thing
18?
wrong, yeah. Only thing wrong is, she said, he didn't show any way forward. He just showed it was dismal.
Yeah.
That was right. He didn't show any way forward.
Yeah.
So, all right, Winston-Salem, what are you doing going? Well, I didn't know, but the only thing I knew...
But Black had been waiting.
Wednesday Black, he was waiting.
Is he still the great... Would you like to know what an organizer told me about him this year?
No.
I told him about it, and he found it, okay? He got it. He's retired in Greensboro. He comes back to see me 2 more times. He
Black
said,
did?
yeah, Chick, no, this organizer. I haven't seen Chick yet, okay? I said, he's could be 70, you know, I mean, he could be younger. He's retired, you see, I've heard that of him. And I've told him he's a great guy, you know. He said, well, people say Thelma Hopkins was big and all. I said, Chick's are steady, you know.
Yeah.
Finally, he comes back twice. Tell you some things. You take him with you into a filling station in Winston, and you go back a second or third time, and you've got a core base in Western Place. I mean, you know, I mean, that guy still can move people, you know. But I don't know what he was able to do or how you
Boy,
moved.
if I ever did anything in my life, I guess that's one thing I did, although I was just sent in for that name, and I didn't talk all that much to him or
Yeah.
anything, but he was just sitting there waiting.
Yeah.
And if nobody had been sent into contact
Did you
him,
stay underground with your core group that you started with?
No.
Or what'd you do?
no.
How'd you work?
What happened was, you see, he immediately, what he did was, he put me in touch with a number of these chicken preachers, holiness preachers, and fixed it so that, you know, because their income, this was his pitch. He was saying, you got a congregation, you living on their collections. They make it so damn little now.
Yeah.
Says, we're trying to get them so the pay is raised, and you ought to pitch in and help with it. And there were quite a number of them that were willing to let me go there and talk.
Yeah,
you
right.
see.
Clever approach. Yeah.
And so that was the way it started with these preachers. And then also, he would send me to see white workers that he felt
would respond to
yeah,
you.
right.
Okay.
And there was a small group of white workers that began to form, and then all put together, black and white together from the start.
You don't remember if Slim Shepherd was one of those whites? Very slim guy.
remember any of
White
those
man.
names.
Okay. That's okay.
Well, the only name I
These
remember
are the guys
is black.
that in later years you see stayed steady.
Yeah,
Right.
but when I left,
Black.
there were only about, when I left, there were only about, I think, 20 or 30.
Could have been these people that John talking about arose out of a spontaneous strike. See the 43 strike?
Yeah.
Historically, it's described as a spontaneous, that the union organizing drive was going on, but not putting it together, okay?
Yeah.
And what breaks loose, the company provokes a spontaneous strike,
Mhm.
and then the union pours in people, you see. But he could have developed leadership without initially. Sometimes a spontaneous strikes, he develops totally its own leadership.
The only sign of real company tension was, of course, Dick Reynolds was mayor.
He was mayor.
Yes, sir. He was
Yeah.
mayor of Winston-Salem.
Yeah.
And just about a week, I guess, after we got in there, Violet and I were both picked up on the street, Winston-Salem, by two detectives, taken to the police station. Identification. Who are you? What are you doing in town?
That's
What are you doing
a
down there?
town like Winston. That's not a coal mine town.
No.
You know, not Bull Connor's Birmingham either.
No. So I took out my organizer's card, credentials, and said, I'm here working for the CIO. Going to organize the Camel Tobacco plant. Oh, well, we didn't know if that's what, you got proper identifications. Sorry,
Right, yeah.
let's go. But one of the detectives turns up while we were waiting for the bus. About a week later, in front of our house, you see, he turns up at the bus stop. So he looks at us, and we look at him, and Violet says, "Oh, did you live around here?" And he says, "Yeah, I had a room in that house right next door."
I'm watching you all the time. Yeah.
And they were letting us know that they're watching.
That's what the whole thing was, to
Sure,
let you
just
know
a
you
little-
were observed.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
it's good enough intimidation
Yeah.
to start with.
So anyway, that went on, and then there was a story about this.
Any newspaper break?
Black took me through the plant.
How did he do that?
I don't know.
Sneak in? How did he pull it off? and
I don't
save
know,
his
but
own
I got
job?
the impression
He was
that
working
he
in the
was,
plant, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was working there. I got the impression that he was highly respected. He was a
Dangerous
man.
thing to do, though.
Yeah, he was a man that had an air of nobility about
Yes,
him.
yes.
He was
Great
quite
big-
young then.
Much more than if you could have met the leadership in place that didn't respect him. In other words, I always respected him, but he was never as far left as what came into place. You see, you began to get women leaders who, in a period before all the equality of today, were the most prominent leaders in the whole thing, so that they quickly picked up on all the slogans. So the guys again constantly were faced with, we are exploited as workers, we are exploited as blacks, and we're exploited as women, and that triple exploitation makes that, they had it down pat, and they were beautiful, many of them. But some of them also had a tinge. If I felt it, I don't know he did. You follow me? It was like they had carried it into a dogma, so that let him get in the way, or you know what I mean? They were like capable of banging you on the head with it too. You know what I mean? You're not as exploited as we are, so you're not as capable of speaking on it.
Well, I feel that. I would guess that anything left of him wasn't really left. It was left in quotation marks.
But that's what I meant. They regarded him as a conservative as the thing moved on. That was what.
See, he could talk
and of
to
course,
white
that
workers.
destroyed. You know what I mean? In the 70s, they developed a tremendous left movement inside of one black-led local in the state of North Carolina. But that was all later, you know.
That was all later,
and I don't know whether did you know that over there? I mean, would you have picked that up that they organized? You didn't learn
I
that
had no
till you got
idea
back.
what happened.
Okay.
We did get great. He took me through the plant, and that's where there was this big young black worker that was piling up the
tell
boxes.
me that. Yeah. Tell me.
He was putting the
What
cartons.
was the guy doing?
He
This
was
was
putting
raw
the-
tobacco leaves? He was putting
No.
What was he packing?
This was cartons of cigarettes.
Into
What was it, 10 packs a carton? Or
Yeah,
something like
okay,
that?
yeah.
Cartons of cigarettes.
Into
He
a
was
case.
packing into these big cardboard cases.
Okay, yeah.
He was putting the cases together,
Yeah.
filling them with cartons,
Yeah.
closing them up and sealing them, and then he would take a big case, and he was a tremendous guy,
Yeah.
put it in the palm of his hand and throw it, just lob it
Yeah.
over against the wall
Yeah.
of the finishing room, which
Like
was also
20
a
feet
warehouse.
away or so, huh? Across this
It
room?
must have been just about that far over
Okay,
that wall.
15 feet.
And he would line them up. He would stack them 4 high, you see,
They'd
and all the
line
way across.
perfectly.
Absolutely
Throw them
perfect.
and they'd line perfectly, no bounce.
I stood there and watched him, I guess, and talked with him for about 20 minutes. I never saw him miss. I mean miss. I never saw him get one sort of twisted over
Yeah, right.
so it
They
wasn't
just landed
square.
perfectly.
Just landed perfect. And he told me, I was complimenting him on his prowess, you know. And he said, yeah, but he said, you know, I found out that they have again, the company has again cut down on the tobacco load per cigarette. And I said, how do you know? He says, because every time that happens, I start missing. And then I've got to get myself turned around.
The weight's altered by ounces.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And and the other thing that I did, so I did go around talking to these holiness churches, and the only other thing I did I remember was I wrote to Labor Research and asked them to do an analysis of Reynolds. Especially, I remembered one thing that you had done on Duke and the tobacco trust in North Carolina. So I asked them, I said, give us the figures on how they declare for taxation and how they declare for dividends, because they're two very different figures, you know. They say we got this much when it comes to paying and that much when it comes to dividing.
That's a big issue in coal to this day. So
It is.
Put the coal lands in for nothing, for tax purposes, but value them extremely high for bank loans.
Well, they did a good thing. What was the name of that
They
old
researched
guy?
that for you.
Yeah, Bob, what was his name?
Dunn? Was it one of the
Yeah, I think it was, Robert Dunn.
not the Dunns from Minneapolis, but
No,
Dunn.
yeah. I think it was Robert Dunn.
Yeah, I think, they did a beautiful job.
They did a very good research job and sent it to us, and we just started off with that. We were thinking about putting out a paper, we haven't got it yet.
You worked how long then? Most of 42? Or on the Reynolds Drive?
No, I think I was just there about 2.5 months.
That's all. So you didn't get there until the fall? Then they got you.
I guess it must have been.
You stayed in winter. You were here and then a little while in Suffolk.
I was here through the summer, I remember that.
Through the summer of 42.
Yeah, when the summer school and the summer music festival was going on.
Yeah.
I guess it must have been the fall I went out there.
You went to just by Suffolk, more or less.
I went up to Suffolk while I was here,
Okay, look.
going to State County.
Yeah.
And somehow I got borrowed, I guess, to go up to Suffolk. And you know, at Suffolk, there's a funny thing. You remember that little Planters Peanut Man?
Yeah,
Used to
sure, yeah.
stand there like this with his little
Little
round,
man with a hat,
yeah, a little round bulb at the top, another round.
The
Well, I
shape of a
went-
peanut figure,
Yeah, when I went in to negotiate with that Mr. Obasi, an Italian.
They had won the election in Suffolk, and they were ready for negotiation.
This was before the elections, I
Okay.
think. And the president of Planters Peanuts was a man, an Italian named Obasi, O-B-I-C-I. And I opened the door and walked in, I nearly dropped, because there was Mr. Peanut.
His shape
It's fitting him, it's exactly that shape.
Really?
A little man that was just two blobs
blobs.
like that, you see. And we talked. Now, he had really a good idea.
What was that?
He had a good idea. He was, according to what I heard at the time, he was a Mussolini man. He was a supporter of Mussolini. And his idea was there were 4 or 5 other peanut packers around here.
Go get them.
All smaller than him. And he grinned from ear to ear, you see, and he says, well, he says, you know, I'll tell you what I'll do. He says, you organize them, and anything they give you, I'll give with no problems, no trouble, he says. But get them first.
Wonderful.
Get rid of his competition.
That's sophistication in the South, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
you never meet that again. One last story, and then we'll hit the button. What is it you told me you believe was in the local 319 Highland Cotton Mill local? I don't want to, Buddy's in agreement with you. She doesn't remember who it was, but there was a big portrait there.
And she remembers it was an airport in there.
Yeah.
There was a picture of Malta Dome that was taken either during or I think it was taken just
A color
after.
photo
the bomb.
or a black and white? What was
I
it?
think it was black and white. I just remember his hair parted down the middle, and this great massive lot of hair falling down around on either side of his head. That was Malta Dome.
And just his
The
figure
first time I'd ever
up
seen
to the waist, or where?
Just his head,
His head.
bust, head and neck.
Yeah.
And I think
It was
I
large
heard
too. You said
large,
large
yeah,
blow-up.
fairly large. Well, it wasn't huge. It was about not as big as that one, but something like the size of this one, I think.
Okay, so pretty maybe
And I think that I was.
16 by 20 or something. Yeah.
I think
And
I
where was
heard-
it hanging in the?
Well, I think I heard that
Union
it was
Hall.
hanging. If I remember right, it was hanging right on the wall behind where Buck Hampson used to sit
I
and
wanna
chair
ask
the
some people
meetings.
about that.
They used to put a table out there, and the officers would sit at the table.
Yeah, right.
And I think it was hanging
That was
right
for
on
the
that
meeting,
wall.
and then the square dance hall that was removed.
Yeah, right. And I think somebody told me that this was brought by Anna Louise Strong to Greensboro and given to Barton Bell when she came through Greensboro. I think that's what it was.
I've never met her. I've heard, never known so many people who didn't, that she described it.
And yeah, I remember seeing that.
Well, that's fascinating. Well, we've stayed up real late, but I appreciate your chatting, because this is a lost bunch of stuff that I think is just beautiful. And a lot of the people, if I see Esther Gillis or Willie Helms has just died, but, you know, there's a lot that Chick Black, I'd love to, you know, it'll stir them, because, you know, I haven't seen you here, but then these are North Carolina stories, you know, and when we see Bell, we'll share the large stuff with
You know, I'd have to be crazy, but there are a lot of stories that people ought to get together and piece together.
Yeah, well, this is beautiful. It's a whole part of you I just began to pick up in fragments, and then realized how many things I couldn't, I would have been a very poor witness if somebody had said, you know, how much union expense weighed. I really didn't know. I didn't bump into it.
Well, I never had really.
Because you
all
were
that
League of
much.
Young Southerners, and I remembered, you know, I would have remembered that, but I didn't get to all the crossing of the channels in your life.
See, I was always moved around so much. I never had experience in a situation where you start from scratch, organize, then you have a contract, then you have to police the
You know what?
contracts,
You had all these arrests in China, which disrupted your life, even though you remained enormously stable in all of your views on it. Yet China represented in many ways, after what you're describing to me, and then the way the Army screwed you with full-time and all, the first chance to relate to a people's movement in a stable job. You know what I mean? I certainly know all of us have accidents in history. And what happened just, I think if I hadn't, stayed in certain jobs as I did for a year or two, say in industry at a time, and then later with certain organizations, it gives you a sense of continuity. I'd have been much more ripped up, but I think China represented a beautiful blending in your life. Came on at the right thing.
In my life, you see, it's hard to explain to people here that never were in something like that kind of movement here. It's hard to explain that business. Like, my life hasn't been tragic in any sense. All of those years, they weren't a subtraction from life in China or life in general. They were still an addition.
Well, you must have seen in the Chinese people the culmination of a lot of grown-up practice of Chick-fil-A. In other words, it all sort of gelled together, and then the heroic leadership, here it was, going like, wow, you know what I mean? And there you were. How could you walk away from it? You were John Reed, you were, and you were living. John Reed saw it, and boom, he was gone when he was 30.
Well, but I know, you always feel, I just think back about that old man Mason, and about, I'd almost forgotten about Chick Black, but about Willie.
Yeah, Willie.
And Esther Gillis.
You got to know all of them, and you got the richness of it.
Yeah, and the people in High Point, and all of us there, and so on.
There was a richness in all of that I think it was a tapestry of life. It's just hard to explain to people. You try to transmit the richness of it, but it's imprinted on you. I don't know. I don't have a talent to.
Joe Gelders.
Yeah.
No, because I always felt and feel that these were the best people, really.
Yeah.
And to put it crudely, that I wasn't anywhere near up to them.
Oh,
but
really?
that they had this kind of influence on me.
Yeah.
And as long as you could hold on to that and develop that, you'd be all right.
Yeah. Well, less political, you'll see when you take your time on this lifestyle stuff. You may not agree with it, but I think living amongst miners and having them on the boards of the Klan, and remember, they were not political people, okay? They were molded in trade unionism with only very mild, none of the particular people that had the most influence on me. In a way, it was a tremendous stability of 20 years. I try to describe it like there's a class conflict. It's just it's not Marxian. In other words, it's them against the world, and that's a cohesiveness, once you're part of it, that you just sense. Then when I went to Wales, I saw it in its political form. That was what was beautiful. When I was in South Wales, the communists, everybody's labor, okay? Like 1% of them might not vote labor, okay? Which means everything is all, in some measure, understanding social. Then their culture, which you may have seen in China, which I never saw here.
Right.
Never saw that.
Right. They got songs, they got choruses.
I sat in a meeting of 30 coal miners, delegated miners. Every one of them could have been a U.S. senator, the way they bore themselves in a parliamentary way. And these were third, fourth generation trade unionists. I can't describe how they took the floor. They made me feel like a slob, I spoke, they knew how to use every device I knew, like through their grandparents. and then were more dignified with it. These were working miners, not an official president. And then at the back of the hall, while something's speaking, one young miner turns to me. This was like a flash. And he says, "Do you know our ports?" I said, "Big piece. Ah, that's the shame." He said, "I was reading our Welsh ports." You know the English ports. See, here's a guy who knows all the English ports, and he's talking about the Welsh. You see what I mean? And, you know, now you've seen, you know, I mean, I'm sure
They
you've
didn't
seen.
talk Welsh, huh?
No, they didn't speak Welsh. They spoke perfect English. But a Welsh nationalist movement was striking out while I was there. The English street signs, writing over. These people were not getting taken off into that. They were sympathetic to it. They understood it. They prided themselves on the Welsh tradition. They weren't trying to be separatist with it, you know. Like rip up the miners' union. Oh, you follow me? But it was there. I mean, I could see the background for it. But I think what he was saying to me would have been true 20 years earlier, 30. There wasn't any movement. He just said these were cultured people. I mean, they knew their Welsh language, they knew their Welsh poets, they knew English poets, and they were workers. In this country, a guy like that leads a working class. Trading and fishing. And their leaders, their majority of their leaders were communists. Biggest of all the districts. The three biggest districts you see in England in mining is Yorkshire, Scotland, and Wales, all communist led. And yet they're not a majority of the union. You know, they're the three biggest districts, and the smaller ones outvote, you know, with Labour Party. And they keep a coalition. They handle themselves very well. But no sectarianism like I saw here, you know, none. These are real union officials. You know, a communist is a union official. He is a brilliant union official. And there the communist paper sits on his desk, you know, and he's known as a communist, that's all, but he's proved himself.
They're very skilled. I knew one of them I met in China because he came there quite often. It was a member of the Central Committee, the OCP, and then he set up the CP Marxist-Leninist. Way the hell gone now. What was his name?
You knew a Welshman, really?
No, he wasn't Welsh. He
An
was,
Englishman, huh?
Yorkshire, I think.
Yeah, I don't. I only know the ones that appeared in, you know, the press over here.
But look, well, how do you put in a, what about the role of the labor movement in this country now?
Well, I suppose my greatest hope now is that guys like Fraser and Otto, Winston, you know, the machinist guy, new guy in oil, and some of the unions are bringing forward a new breed. I don't credit it to the left. And then let me tell you one other development that's not political. Let me give you a movement that's not political, which the Mine Workers illustrate. Forget names or who's in office. It's the revolution in the age of the men at the working point. That's an absolute revolution, sir. 12 years ago, the average age of working coal miners was 46 years. And that consisted essentially of some men under 30 and a lot of men over 55. Okay? The middle ground group had been decimated by the automation and had left Appalachian left behind. Now those older men have retired, and the average age is dropping 33, 31, 29. And I visited mines in the last few years where in this kind of situation, it actually was unsafe to develop. The average age in one new mine was 25. One section had a section foreman 24 years old. See, it means that in skill terms, he hasn't heard enough creaks. He has, you know what I mean, in safety terms. There's like age gives you a certain, and it means we don't know. Now that's more important than the political trends in a way. That revolution, I don't know where that's going to come out. because they're mixed up with a lack of a work ethic. The depression group is gone. It could be that all of a sudden we will get, without the left having very much to do with it, a new bunch of, people coming forward.
Well, then again, you see, who the hell is the left?
Yeah, I don't.
When you say without the left,
Yeah, who is it? These crazies tonight have as much influence as the
in other words, the left.
stable people.
Yeah.
Of the old days, the carryover of them, that doesn't mean anything.
Because it seems to me the left, they're not self-appointed. You can't appoint yourself.
No.
Secondly, they're not set up by a charter from somewhere,
And no one listens.
from some other country.
No.
You can't give out any charter.
No.
So,
Who are they? Yeah.
yeah, who are they? It seems to me that what happens is going to be a lot different from the old.
No version we have will unfold. No version, no dream will unfold.
That thing's gone as far as it could go, really.
Yeah, it's history.
Yeah.
Really, it's a
And you see
beautiful
one thing,
tapestry to look at, but it has no connection with what's going to come out in the 80s.
one thing I want to add on this.
Yeah.
This thing's still going. No,
Yeah,
okay,
cut it off.
leave
Go
it.
ahead.
Now I want to add to that thing about Barth, because I just thought of something else that he
Yeah.
said. It was very important on the question of the communist movement and the revolutionary movement in this country, when he said that it had been wrong to always follow in step
Right.
with what happened in the Soviet Union. He said that in that way we had a situation in which the communists in this country got themselves the name of being foreign agents.
Yeah.
And he was saying, of course, that was the reactionaries that said that, but because of the way the revolutionaries here behaved,
Yeah.
that it made that story believable to ordinary workers. They're always talking about Russia. They're always changing, explaining things, apologizing.
Yeah.
And we did, and I think right now the old CP in this country is the most loyal sort of apologist for whatever happens in Russia or from Russia. And
Or take the crazy kids tonight that were disrupting. What do they represent? Is that Maoism? What is that? That's not anything. Is it?
Nothing to do with
How can
Mao.
that relate? Can you imagine them being out at Plant Gates? Look at this paper they put out. They're a revolutionary workers
Well, I haven't seen
party.
that.
But I mean that's their garbage. There's 10 factions like that. What the hell do they have to do with anything?
And you see, that's why one thing, the basic thing about Mao that was embedded deep in the minds of people in China is very simple, basic slogan: serves the people. You find out what the people feel that they really need, what they demand. You put it together, make it, systematic, clean away the dross, explain away the thing, and then you take that and go back to the people, organize them, help them to carry it out, and you keep checking it out against the realities as you're carrying it out. Then you bring that experience back up to the top, and you go through this process. That's what they call the mass line. The policy of the party ought to come from the masses and then go back to the masses. So Mao wrote that like the Central Committee of the party, it only has one function. It's a processing plant. It's a plant where you take this raw material, these demands and needs and opinions of the masses, you process them into some kind of policy, then you take it back to them and keep checking it out and improving and changing. It's not an outfit that has some magic books which arm it with the sum total of all wisdom, and then all you got to do is go down and teach that wisdom to the masses. That's not the way it is. You get some understanding of society, and then you've got to go down and learn from the masses. Find out how they see what they think.
What's your impression in coming over here? How can you speak of a left that has influence,
It doesn't exist. I don't believe it exists.
I mean, I can see Deng as he moved around the country. I mean, he deals with the all-millionaires. I mean, he looks at the power.
He deals with any people he's got to deal with.
He's got to deal with. This
Sure.
is who he's dealing with.
Sure.
Who's he to seek out? I mean, are there any other leverages here? The labor movement, truthfully, if he was to look to it, what can it leverage? You know, it can't take care of itself.
No, for sure.
It can't take Roanoke Rapids.
Mean
It
is
won a
the right
National Labor
goal.
Relations Board of Labor. It's got 15 court orders ordering them to bargain. Can't get a contract.
You know, that really bugs. That's one thing, really. So I said at this trade union luncheon, I said, cultural shock. When you sit there and tell me that the textile workers in the South are unorganized today, that's a shock.
See, they haven't touched the South. Not
And
just
they said
textile, they can't break through. They just lost the big Norfolk Newport News. The biggest steel workers local in the country is the Newport News shipyard. Just lost the biggest unit in the South. They just got
The reason,
defeated in the
sure,
big strike.
they don't learn from the people, they don't serve the people, that's not what they're out for. You see, what it looks like to me is that these unions have become such big establishments that in many places the worker is really sort of caught in between two kinds of overlords, you know.
Yeah.
And these two kinds of overlords, they fight each other.
Well, and
to
let
some
me
extent.
tell you, because Woodcock is sitting in China and
Yeah.
Frazier's one of the people I still have some hope for.
Yeah.
But a good friend of mine, a very good observer, has gone to Detroit that I worked with in Appalachia. He's a very solid political thinking person who is the medical director of a big auto workers clinic after the coal mines were being 20 years. And he now intimately has cared for Emil Mauzy, the old socialist, colleague of the old league, and probably already has 1,000 or 2,000 auto worker thing. He says, in the shops, UAW is not regarded as UAW, which we view as more progressive, to them is just another machine for speed up, just another device that the company has, it breaks down, well, where anywhere is the union's got meaning then, is when you got to deal with a real solid white workers and a growing majority of black workers in most of those big Detroit auto plants. They have no use for the goddamn union and the whole structure.
Can't do with them,
And if you can't do with the UAW, then where have you got? We know the rest are worse,
Yeah. Well, but that was the thing in this country. We had about 1/3 of the organized workers under progressive leadership. And in those days, I remember distinctly, wherever you had a Democratic local, you had a progressive local, progressive leadership.
That's right.
If the workers could turn out and vote, that's all you needed. And you could
But
elect
that's not
them
true
in.
anymore. Now, I told you, the democracy in the mind, what it doesn't mean it's going to be. That with democracy you've won. No. They won democracy, but they did nothing to give the workers a sense of themselves or how to operate with it or anything.
Well, and yet, you don't have any organization now. If I was here now, I told this to people in New York,
You'd be frustrated.
I wouldn't know where to go.
No.
And I'm sure I wouldn't go anywhere.
Guys like me have drifted for years. Maybe that's why people say you sell out or something. What are you to do? Do you know of a single organization you'd
Nothing to
suggest for me to,
sell.
what am I to belong to that would give me any help, you know what I mean?